that actually true? The 2.3 million Huni thing?
Jacob Wolf's never wrong.
Apparently, yeah.
You can build an entire League of Legends team with that money.
Well, that's the thing, actually. We can get into that on the show if you want, but put it this way. Basically, what was ridiculous about this off-season is, like, the numbers didn't just go up gradually. Like, even for bad players, people were asking, like, $1 million buyouts. Like, I'll give you an example. You know that guy who played... Fuck, I've just realised we're actually live on the stream. So I won't say the name, actually. I almost tricked myself there. Technically, we're, like, live on the stream now. But I'll just say there was a player who, if I... Like, I'll type the name in here. No one can see this, right?
Yeah, no one can see Discord.
Like... This player here, you know this guy, right, from the LCS. He's an all right player. Like, he's an up-and-coming talent.
I mean,
like, this person, no joke, I heard the buyout was like...
Oh, no, that's public, Dorn. Wait. That's public. So I can say it.
Exactly.
No, wait.
So imagine what it's like to build a real roster now. It's bonkers.
Duncan, so regarding the person you talked about...
that actually
Travis talked about it on the show. That his buyout is over $1 million, so it's already public information.
It's already okay.
So we'll talk about it on the show.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, are we ready to go then?
Yeah.
Right. This is going to be episode 93 of Listen Loco. We're going to do one during the off season, and as a result, like, I think this is an example of a show where obviously there's no matches to talk about. We're not going to talk about Worlds. That has been talked to death on every single talk show, including this show. And obviously we did all the Summoning Insight. Plus, High isn't an active player now. I don't think he's be interested in the topic anyway. So what we'll do is we'll dive into some like general things. Obviously we can ask him what he thinks about the LCS, the franchising era and stuff. And then maybe some of the off-season moves, see what Loco thinks about them, etc. So first things first, High. One of the things I learned is a good trick a long time ago is sometimes it's actually better not to be like super professional, like a television studio would, and, ask the person beforehand all the like screening questions, like, what are you doing at the moment? And what title should I give you and stuff? Because what I think is if I don't actually know what you're doing at the moment, fans probably don't either. So why do you tell us? So you're working with this company, Radiance, right? Which as far as I can tell, like I've only seen tweets of this. I think as far as I know, isn't it like your company? And is it an esports team? I'm not quite sure. Is it?
Right. So it's an esports team that we started this year back in March. We have a pretty big focus of being like a lifestyle brand similar to 100 but entirely different. And we have a bunch of esports teams players as well. So we're involved in Tekken, we're involved in Street Fighter. We have a League amateur team for what it's worth, and we have a few Hearthstone players in the Grandmasters League. Of course, I want to expand it to more games, but as you can obviously tell, the Tier 1 esports games are extremely expensive. Yes. And I don't believe it's a good idea to seek farther investment from outside parties at the moment, because they're going to want, like 5x return or 10x return within the next 2-3 years. I don't think that's happening, right? So I'm trying to build my brand slowly, and what I'm trying to build the brand off of is, one, being respectful and friendly to others and reminding people why they started playing games in the first place. I started playing because it was fun, because I wanted to make new friends and make good memories. And as esports is growing and developing, people are kind of just staring at the money. They're staring about the fame, which is fine. You can do whatever you want, but that's not what our organization is about. So we're picking up players, we're creating content, we're doing things that revolve around people being nice to one another, being respectful to another, and reminding people why they started playing games in the first place.
I can only see one problem here, is that you're actually on Listen Local right now, and we're not actually usually that nice or respectful people. We'll do our best, Hi. Just for you, we'll do our absolute best this episode. I just can't promise anything there. Like,
don't get me, that makes it tough, right? Like, even to be on shows like this, right? Or even playing in Twitch Rivals, for example, right? Imagine me being on a team with Tarzan and Tyler One. They're great personalities and they're fine streamers. I have nothing against their, them from their business point of view, but it wouldn't make sense for me to interact with them or to play with them, right? So when I'm trying to find players, I'm looking for League amateur players. Almost every single player that I talk to has some kind of a history of saying, toxic things.
Of course.
There's different levels of that, right?
Yes.
I don't think it's necessarily wrong if someone calls like someone an idiot or, hey, you suck. Yeah, you shouldn't do that, but that's a whole world of difference.
It's not immoral put that way,
exactly. Right?
Yes.
So there's like different levels, and you can also help people say better things or be a better person, right? People can learn to be more professional. So it's definitely tough.
Here's the funny thing, right? People would probably expect me to rail against that and be like, that's bullshit, whatever, because it's not really my personality. But I will say that actually does tie into something, like Loco can confirm this, that we've discussed on the last episode of Summoning Insight, a bunch of them actually, which is one of the things that I think that North America, particularly as a region, needs is in sports in North America, you get coached if you're in sports from, I think, probably about 7 years old or something. You have coaches your whole life. And so you learn something akin to what they have in Korea, like the concept of respecting the coach,
right,
and
respecting
understanding your
others.
place within the org, never getting too big ahead. And the problem I feel like in esports is not only are a lot of the players nerds anyway, so they're not super social, but they only get coached when they're like 18 years old and they're a pro already. Like, it's almost too late to like break the bad habits. If they're built up over years and years, it's going to be really tough. So I could see that what the value of this would be, especially if you're working in the amateur scene now. If you can get to some of these guys before they become pro, and you're obviously someone that they will know and perhaps respect as a result, you actually could affect the kind of player they will be when they get to the LCS level before some coach has to try and wrangle this guy, and maybe you can affect some change early on.
Right. I think it's a two-way problem right now where players are too egotistical. Like you'll see these amateur players that haven't made it to Worlds, that haven't won a championship, and they're like, my way or the highway, right? Which is one, a problem. And then the second problem is, I think for a lot of the coaches, they come from places where they don't have a background of being a coach. So they're not necessarily qualified. So then you have on one end people that don't respect coaches, and the other end coaches that aren't qualified to be coaches. And it breeds a very terrible environment. And it has had bad environment for the past year or two. Or so.
Loco,
there's definitely good coaches out there, though, for sure.
Sure, there's a few. Loco, one thing I know that we've talked about in the past, but you haven't mentioned many times on shows, is in line with what Hai said there. Like, one of the problems is when fans hear about like problem players and they think of the big names, like
Dog, Forgiven,
the really, really big names. Though what they don't realize is the reason we have to keep talking about those people is they're super talented players. But what people don't know is what I just said there is totally correct. You can go to the amateur scene, the semi-pro scene, a guy that someone watching the show would never have heard of. And some of those players have an ego as if they were like Forgiven in his prime or fake. Like some of them have crazy egos, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, for example, there's players in the amateur scene that are barely making it into scouting grounds that are getting academy tryouts. Whenever they don't get in, the first thing they say is LCS teams don't know jack shit. I should be fucking playing in LCS right now. This is why NA is bad. It is ridiculous. Like, even with reality checks of losing to just academy level players, what some of these amateur level players think.
Sure. The funny thing is, that's one thing that people might think is like a team game related issue, because obviously it's actually, by the way, I don't know if people know this in esports, but one of the reasons in the early days when there used to only be people like me playing Quake, the reason why games like Counter-Strike actually became popular is because obviously in a team game, you don't have to feel frustrated that you're fucking up the game all the time. You can blame your teammate, or you can think, well, if I had a better teammate, I don't want, there's all these great ways that you can sort of feel good about not winning the game and not get raged at yourself. But I will say, to be honest, I don't think that's even what makes this happen at this level. Because to be fair, even in pro esports games that are 1v1, you can always blame the game or say like the other person's character's imba if it's a fighting game, or if it's StarCraft, you just say their race is imbalanced. Like there'll always be some excuse, unfortunately. But that's a perfect example there of what we need the people. Like the key thing here is it's not like coaching in the game. We're talking about like basically coaching as people, basically, right? Trying to help people mature past that before they. Because you don't want them to do that while they're being a pro. Hopefully it should happen before they become a pro, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, I think why it happens is there isn't like a gradual level that you're going to do. Like you do solo queue, and then you go amateur, and then you go academy, you go LCS. A lot of times people jump steps, and there isn't this like smoothing out process of like going from solo queue to amateur, from amateur to academy, from academy to LCS. Like there isn't good ways to prove yourself, so you feel extremely frustrated as like a up and coming prospect, or as an academy player, or even as an LCS player, that you can't upgrade even though you're showing results. So I think that's something that has to improve in the future, like just the smoothing out process from you going from raw talent to actually becoming an LCS player.
Right. You're basically saying that unless you're an LCS, you basically don't have anything going for you, even if you're an academy, because people don't care about academy. Because if you take a look at the viewership on the games, they get like, 10,000, which is a good amount for streams, don't get me wrong. But compared to LCS or anything else, it's like a manageable amount, right? So I think something that would be cool is to like bring back, like MLGs and IEMs, like give these players giant tournaments. People would watch that. Like, like to have these high quality productions, $50,000 tournaments, whatever. and these people are popping off at these tournaments. I'd watch that. I think these
actually,
super cool.
Speaking of which, along those lines, I had a thought today because one of the things that was recently teased was that Riot wants to do some kind of like a World Cup approach where it'll be like national teams and they'll play. I can't remember what the details were. I don't know if many details came out right, Loco. I think it was just hinted at or something like they're trying to set it up.
They want to do it. They want to do it in the future. They don't know if next year, but they for sure want to do a World Cup format.
But the problem with that approach is I immediately, when I thought about it, was actually going to flame it and be like, this is terrible because, we want more international competition, but we don't really want like a weird World Cup. Like we want real teams, So I actually think a cool way to like compromise would be, why don't they make a rule where it's like no LCS players can play on the national team? So then it's like the best Korean Academy, like challenger players versus the best Academy players. That would be a cool way to test out new talent, give them a stage to play on. I think that would be a good approach to do. What do you think?
I actually would love it if they just killed MSI or what if it killed Spring and in Spring we had like a World Cup format. I think like there is huge amount of pride playing for your country and being the best in your country, especially for I know the Overwatch World Cup is majorly successful and there's a lot of work that goes into being part of an Overwatch Worlds team for your country. And people carry pride in that, and people do think it's really important. And I think especially for the Asian countries, and I'm sure for the European countries, like players will want to rep their national team and do well.
Here's the thing. I was with you on most of that, but I will just say I actually follow Overwatch, and the problem is, Loco, that only happened on the first World Cup. Every World Cup since, less and less of the elite Koreans were in the lineup, and they kind of thought like, we can win with anyone. And so some of the best players would sort of say, this is the problem I see in League of Legends. Unless you remove, like you say, an already existing tournament. If I'm like some player who's in G2, and I've just played every tournament of the year right up to the finals, I'm just going to say, actually, pick someone else. Like I need a few months off. Like, I can't play another tournament as well. So my only issue would be if it's jammed into the already existing. Like if it's in the off season, I think that would kill players. Like you've got to have some time off. I mean, you remember this high when you were going to like All Stars and LCS and Worlds. Like you never get a break, and then you used to have IEMs back then as well.
Right, but I think there's a world where you can have a bit of both. I remember when I was at Riot and we had like meetings like, hey, what would you guys like to see to be improved upon the next years? Because they would ask us, how do you feel about the amount of tournaments there? How do you feel about the length of the season, etc.? And I like the days where we had the IEMs and stuff like that. TSM won 2015 IEM over in Europe. We won San Jose. So it's not like we haven't performed internationally. Sure, maybe at Worlds we haven't won, but we've done well at other international events and have beaten strong teams. And I think something cool is to bring that back. And the way you can do that is by shortening the LCS season. Right now you play 2 games a weekend over a course of 3 months, 2.5 months, 9 weeks. So it's like you play a total of 18 games over 2.5 months. And that's such a long time for a short amount of games. So why not just shorten the season, because most people don't care about the regular season anyway. Make the games happen, I don't know, 4 times a week or something like that. So that way you can finish the entire season in one season. Then follow that up with an international season where you invite either the top team, the middle team, and the bottom team to play so that there's different representation in terms of skill level. So not only the top get to reap the rewards of being good, which they should, but you should also show respect to the bottom teams. Have those teams play in these international tournaments, and you can even like rotate the teams that you send in. So you could do that twice a year, after spring, after summer, by shortening those seasons and still have a world championship at the end. Yes, players will have less time off, but the time being, almost every player I've talked to dislikes the amount of time they have off unless they're the team that is in Worlds and if they proceed far into Worlds. There's a large difference between teams that qualify for Worlds and teams that don't. Those teams have 2.5 months off or something like that. I believe I ran into like Acadia at TwitchCon, and he's been like, they didn't qualify for Worlds, right? So he's been doing nothing for the past month and a half before this, and he's doing nothing for the next 2 months because practice doesn't start until January. So for players that don't qualify for Worlds or the offseason, they have an entirety of 3 months where they're doing absolutely nothing at all. And I feel like that's how much rest do you need, right? Like these players want to play, they want to compete. Give them more opportunity to play against teams that are international, and they'll be all for it. You tell them more games in NA, maybe they're not so interested. Sure, but give them the opportunity to play versus Fnatic or G2 or SKT, every single player, and they better at least be super down for that. If they're not down for that, then they shouldn't deserve to be players. Offer them opportunity to do that, every single player will say yes, and none of them will complain.
Adding on to that, one thing that's a huge problem is kind of the intensity of the year. The LCS regular season, like Kai mentioned, it's actually very, very low intensity. until you get to the later weeks and like the opening weeks is a little bit intense. Like it's actually really lax, and a huge problem that teams have is like having players focus and not build habits like during the LCS regular season, because it's really boring. You're just playing against other LCS teams and you're only playing 2 games. So yeah, like just players and teams have gotten more and more lax, and I would love it if the intensity was a little bit higher because the season was shorter and the games were more meaningful. And then the intensity during Worlds and the boot camp leading up to it is a real big problem, because for like those 2 months, things are so incredibly intense where the rest of the year is nothing like that.
Sure. Yeah, that's also the reason why like just having more tournaments as opposed to league formats is also cool, because like if you had a weekend tournament like an old IEM, but you were allowed to have a mix of teams again internationally, who wouldn't want to watch like TSM play Griffin, play Splice, play some Chinese team? That would be, yeah, it wouldn't be Worlds. In fact, that'd be the whole premise. It isn't all the teams, but it'd still be interesting, just like the IEMs we were talking about before. Like they would. The key thing is, if people don't know, Riot explicitly didn't allow IEM to have just like any teams they wanted. Their logic was like, you can't be as good as LCS, but you can be like a step below. So we'll give you, say, like 4 LCS teams, and then you have to take 2 from smaller regions or 2 amateur teams or something. And the thing is, yeah, no one cares when like, well, at least back in the day when, you know, Turkey plays, I don't know, someone that is going to beat them definitely. But obviously you care when it's like in the IEM, when it's like Alliance versus Cloud9. Everyone wants to see that match. As a match you might not have ever seen in a best of 5.
And as a player, it's so much more fun to play in a huge crowd at the stadiums at IEM. Sure. Even if there's like 1,000 to 5,000, that's a world of difference between the 100 people that are in the studio. Because at that point, that just becomes like clockwork, right? Every week you show up at a studio, you see the same fans there, which is nothing wrong with that. But it's an entirely different feel from being in a large crowd in front of a bunch of different people. That's where you feel the adrenaline. You feel the, you know, that's where every player wants to be. They want to be in front of the crowds, playing their best champion, kicking butt, you know? Not playing in the LCS every week. They like the glory, you know? So you got to give them opportunity to get glory.
Sure. Oh, by the way, one thing I wanted to ask earlier when you were telling us about Radiant, right? So you say the team's an amateur team at the moment. If they ever got like going up the ranks, would you consider playing in the team yourself? Would you ever do a little comeback? It'd help your own team out.
So I've had to do a few subs before because players just weren't there. I'm not as good as the game as I am anymore. Right now, I'm actually stuck in Masters, which is kind of depressing. I'm
still above Loco, but fair enough.
Right, I'm stuck in Masters. It's pretty depressing. But I don't think I want to play it. Like, it's fun because I'm part of the Twitch Rivals thing. I don't mind playing for fun casually, but I don't want to go compete or anything anymore. Because if I did, I want to be able to compete at the top. I don't think I could without putting in like a billion years of effort. I just don't have the time to do that. So I like what I'm doing now, and hopefully I can just help players, you know, fill the shoes that I didn't.
By the way, Loco, I actually saw on that Twitch Rivals thing, I actually like tuned in at some point.
Yeah.
And I saw that you were taken like super late in that. Like, holy dude, it's not just me. I do it jokingly. They were mad disrespectful to you. So you played an OGN for fuck's sake.
Fucking Daniel and Monty, I know.
They were like drafted like players that I've never even played pro, that are just like meme streamers and stuff. Like,
so
what the hell?
When I got picked, or at least at the end, like both TF Blade and Solo Renekton, they wanted me. But I was getting scared I wouldn't get picked because the people that would have gotten picked over me are people like Your Princess or Chocobars. No disrespect to them. Some of them are higher elo than me, and I can see why people might pick them. But I knew it was going to be a meme, and I know you would have never fucking let me go if I got drafted over a girl. And I didn't get to play because I told you I wanted to play. So I was like...
To be fair, am I mistaken? I have a good memory for these things. Didn't you literally lose in a Twitch Rivals to Choco Bars?
Yeah. Well, I lost to Tokyo.
Just bringing it up. I think Nasumi as well was on the team as well. So you took a spanking, I remember. It was good. Listen, I follow your career, Loco. I'm pulling for you, mate. You are sort of like Ash Ketchum, man. So I'm hoping you get it back. Like, you haven't beat Gary York yet, but keep trying, mate. Maybe it'll happen for you one day.
Yeah,
girl players are good.
You can make fun of those girls, man. A lot of them are higher.
Some of them are pretty good.
Like there's a player on my team, C9 Banana. She's like 380 LP. She's like the second highest LP on our team, I think. She's got 400 LP on me, so she's definitely a better player than I am. So I mean, if they're higher LP than you, they're better than you at the moment.
Yeah,
at least that's how people are looking at it.
I'm not saying girls can't be better than guys, and there's definitely girls that are better than me right now, even in the tournament, and even ones that didn't get picked.
Oh, it's the fact they've never been pro, though.
Yeah, they haven't been pro, and then they're just gonna meme the hell out of it. Oh, Loco didn't get picked over Your Princess. Chocobar is better than Locodoco. Sure. Like I was just afraid of the memes. My small male ego couldn't take it.
Are any of the like really good girls? Are any of them in Challenger?
The closest one is Banana, I believe. Actually, I don't actually know if there's. I don't know if Amelia is playing in Challenger anymore. She always goes to different.
I think she plays in a different
leagues.
region now or something.
Yeah,
I
she
know
always
she's in
plays
Vegas.
different regions. I know she's been Challenger and she can definitely beat Challenger. I just don't know
Sure.
if she plays in NA right now. But I don't actually know if there is one.
There's been a Korean girl challenger. And
Wait, there's the one trick Katarina.
who?
Gamer girl or something like that. That's like 800 LP.
Really? I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, she's a one trick Katarina as far as I know. That's pretty high LP.
I think one of the most impressive one is there was like an Aurelian Soul player that was a girl that hit Challenger in Korea solo. And there's LCS players and Academy players.
That was actually just who he smurfing. Like, obviously.
there's LCS players and Academy players that goes to Korea and can't get Challenger in Korea. So a fact that a non-pro, like a girl player is Challenger in Korea and can hit it shows you like the kind of skill level that girls are achieving.
Sure.
I mean, Hive's teammate was stuck in Diamond 2 when they made Worlds.
Yeah, he got a pentakill.
Oh, balls.
Yeah,
sure.
I didn't get a pentakill at Worlds, so.
What's the end goal for Radiance, by the way? Do you guys want to be an LCS org? It has to be, no? Because like your background and your history.
I do want to be in the LCS since that's where I started, you know. But right now, one, it doesn't make sense, and two, I couldn't do it considering there's only 10 teams. And as I'm sure you noticed, the cost that involves of getting in is pretty astronomical. I don't know if that cost will stay the same in the future, and if it does, then it might be doomed for me. But we'll see. I don't know what holds in the future, but it'd be cool to be involved with LCS, yeah.
Right, in light of that, then let's actually segue into what we were actually discussing briefly before we went live, which is basically because I didn't actually know any of this info was out there. Because actually, at the moment, the problem with like the roster leaks and stuff is not all of them are on Reddit directly. Some of them are on Shores, and so Loco was telling me that apparently on Travis's like Hotline League, I'm assuming they actually made public some info that I actually knew behind the scenes, but I didn't know if it was like private info still. Which is basically it's the best example in the off season to set the tone of how crazy the off seasons are now compared to back in the day, even last year, because this is the player we're talking about. Okay, so everyone knows the player Vulcan, right? He was the support of Clutch Gaming. And people saw him play with that's the right team, right? I'm thinking
Vulcan with
Clutch. He was playing with Piglet and then Cody San, etc. So if you remember, right, if you were going to pick NA only players, yeah, he'd be up there as like one of the better ones. Certainly someone that if you can only have two imports, he's one of the players that'd be in the mix if you're trying to make a good squad. But he's definitely not someone like, put it this way, no one thinks he's as good as Core JJ. No one thinks he's like a world class player. Like, there's not like any in theory like foreign team he'd be recruited to or something. So when you find out that a player like that costs over $1 million. I heard it was like $1.5 million or something. If a player like that is $1.5 million, and then Hooney is $2.5 million or $2 million something, what the fuck would like Jensen be? What would Core JJ be if they were free agents? Like presumably like $4 million or something. Like at this point in time, it's one thing to say it's like millions to make a roster. If to make a roster that can win LCS becomes like a $10 million salary a year thing, dude, like that's higher than like European soccer was like when I was a boy. Like when I was a boy, like I think $1 million was the highest signing in the world. Like obviously inflation and stuff, that would maybe be 10 million now. But like these are crazy figures in a world where, unlike soccer and sports, you don't actually have a way to make that money back now. Like that's the crazy part. You sort of just, what's weird is, on the one hand, you know because you're not making the money that you want to just survive and be one of the teams when it does make money and be big. But on the other hand, the drive to want to win tells you spend my money now and try and win. So you're actually sort of trying to do opposite things at the same time because you're trying to survive, but then also beat the other guy, which will probably cost more money. So I don't blame someone like High if you don't want to do that, because basically to even get a team that could compete, you probably have to, at this point in time, give away half your company for the amount of equity you'd need.
Okay, so let's clean up a little on what Duncan said. So Duncan means 2.3 mil salary for Hooney and 1.5 mil buyout for Vulcan. To buy out Vulcan, it would be 1.5 mil. So yeah, it's crazy where we're at in terms of like buyouts. And I think Travis said it best. Whenever new teams come into the league or there's like shuffling of ownership and teams have a need to be good and teams have a need to make a splash in the LCS, the salaries go up for everyone. And now that players have agents and they have way better information to what everyone else is getting paid with the player union thing, like players are getting more power and players also know their worth kind of. Because beforehand, all the owners and somewhat of the coaches knew what people were getting paid because you would do off-season and you would talk to each other, but players had no idea. So owners would straight lie to players and tell them like, you're one of the highest paid players. Like, this is a really good salary. We're looking out for you. And these are players that, like, they just don't know what's best for themselves, so they would buy that. And now that there's agents, now that players are also more open to sharing information and these numbers are public, the salaries have gone up because you can't cheat players anymore and give them a cheap salary and tell them that's what everyone's getting paid.
Right. I think it's cool that players are making a lot of money and more power to them. I don't think it's sustainable to any of the LCS teams. I personally understand some players' worth. Like, for example, Bjergsen, right? He basically got equity share in TSM, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And that's more than just the fact that he's a good player, right? He's one of the best NA mid laners, if not the best. But not only that, his stream presence is huge. His amount of social flowers is huge. And you're going to ask yourself, why would a company care about that? Well, when you're a company and you go to a brand like Logitech or Zowie or whoever, right? They care about that. And that's how you bring in a large portion of your revenue right now through the amount of money you make through your sponsorships. There's money made through other things like merchandise, buyouts, etc. But a large portion of most teams' salaries are coming from sponsorship dollars. And sponsors are the ones that care about that. So you bring up a player like Vulcan, who's a really good player, don't get me wrong, a super good support. I don't know the amount of Twitter followers he has. I don't know if he streams. But I can't imagine those numbers be that high. And you're telling me that someone costs $1.5 million to buy out his contract for just a strong player with no social following. That's pretty insane, you know? It makes sense for someone that's like a world-class player or has a huge pedigree behind them. But for players that don't have massive followings,
holy shit,
it's pretty insane that they are worth that much.
Dude, I just looked this up now. He only has 6,000 Twitter followers. That's right, actually, I can't believe it's that low. I would have thought like at least 50K or something.
That's less than the Radiance organization has that we started in March. And we're not in the LCS having 100,000 viewers on our stream every week, you know? So there's value into having a big social media presence. And I hope every player knows that. Like, be active on your Twitter, be active on Instagram, because sponsors care about that. If you don't care about that, fine. But other players will, and they'll move ahead of you in terms of how much money they get. So it's pretty insane that it costs that much to get someone, right?
2 years ago, he wasn't even a player. He was a scouting grounds talent.
Yeah, sure.
He was someone from scouting grounds, and then he joined an academy team. And then, the people above him, Hakuo and Apollo, didn't do very well, so he got the spot, and he slowly built up to the position he's in now. So, yeah, he's a decent NA player, and Vulcan's high up on my list of supports if I was a GM, but 1.5 mil for Vulcan, oh my god.
This is actually a problem, though, that comes, unfortunately, from the way like the franchising system is currently applied. Because, first of all, once franchising came along, pretty much every team in LCS took in VC to get into the franchising because it cost $10 million. So, as a result, in the old days, if someone was trying to sign a really good player, like let's just use Hooney as the example, because apparently he's like the big contract every single 2 years. So if someone was trying to sign Hooney, there might only be 3 teams who could have the money to even compete for him. So even as much as they might bid against each other, they can only go so crazy. The problem is if you have 10 teams, and in theory 10 teams can all do a bidding war, you can easily see how that could get really out of control and could go to like 4 times what it would otherwise be. And then I'd also add in, because everyone has VC and because everyone wants a big name, I made this point many times on our show, Loco, ever since basically franchising came along. I think the reason there's so much parity in the league in LCS every split, and like, you know, usually by like the third to last week, like 8 of the teams can still make the playoffs or something crazy like that, is because every team does pay for at least 1 or 2 big name players. Like even bottom teams, so teams like Optic that were bottom before, 100 Thieves, they have massive signings. So like the problem is everyone's inflated the whole market. It's not just the top teams, everyone does it now.
Yeah, and then the
vicious cycle.
So the inflation happens, and then new teams come in and they want to be good. So the inflation happens a little more, and the LCS is constantly shuffling teams. So I think that's why the inflation is consistently happening. I have no doubt in my mind if EG and Immortals did not come back, the salaries wouldn't be this crazy. But because EG and Immortals, I think Immortals might be going a budget route, but EG at least wants to splash out and they want to be a good team from the get-go. So they kind of set the market price for some of the players are going, and all the owners know that. So now all the players, like, there's a premium on them because of these new orgs. I think if the new orgs didn't come in, it would be much better, at least in terms of salaries.
I don't know if that's something that's specifically to just franchise leagues, though. I think that's just a thing across esports in general. You can look at CSGO teams, and I don't know if you know the salaries over there, but for a large portion of the teams over there, their salaries are pretty astronomical for the amount of viewership and or revenue that they bring back in as well. I think it's just kind of across the board that player salaries from each game are pretty high because one player will see the amount of money this player is making in a different game under the same org, and they all talk with each other. Every single pro of every single game, they all have a little friend circle where they all talk to each other, talk about their salaries, and it's just collectively going up across the board in every single game. I don't know if the numbers hold value to that yet. Like the salaries are cool. I'm happy players are making money because I obviously got benefit from that as well, right? I was a player and I got paid a lot for being a player, so I'm thankful that I got paid a lot. But does it make financial sense for a company's point of view to pay that much for every player in every single game? I don't know if that makes sense yet. Like you can look at the amount of revenue that teams are making. Most teams are in the red, and it doesn't seem like that's going to change anytime soon.
No.
So for these organizations, I hope that they continue to survive as things get more and more expensive. But you're already seeing teams blow up or like sell or get out of it, right? Equifax is gone for a multitude of reasons. Who else sold? Clutch sold, and then the other team.
Optic.
Yeah. But people are already getting out. People are getting out of the Call of Duty League. 100 Thieves isn't even involved in it because they said they're known for Call of Duty, right? Like Nate Chat's from Call of Duty.
They won
isn't
2
even involved in the
championships,
CWL anymore because he literally states that it doesn't make financial sense for them to be involved. So there's just so much money that is involved into each game to either run the game, be involved in the game, or to have players for the game. And teams just aren't making money yet.
One thing I actually think is interesting is I was thinking about this recently and I connected like 2 discussions I had with people. So one of the interesting things is the reason also I implied it before as to why someone like Vulcan is so expensive is because if you're an NA team, you have to have a certain amount of NA resident players, and there's not that many that are actually good players, basically. So people like Licorice, obviously in the past, Sneaky would have been one, High would have been one. These players actually become even more of a premium because they're the people who have the experience, can play the role, and also if you then add the super duper import, could make you a really good team. Now, the reason why that's actually different to the past is because most teams actually used to go the other way. What they used to do is go, no, what you do is you buy the best import you can buy, like European player, Korean player. Then what you do is you just get whatever NA players left over. So what do we need? A support and a jungler, right? Just get those in. Whereas I actually think what will happen in the future is the players who are the good NA players will be the ones that are the most sought after in the off seasons, and they will have the insane buy because their premium is insane. But actually, as I told you before, Loco, my solution to the raising of the salaries and the inflations for buyouts and stuff is just take that money and invest it in scouts for the import players. Like, why pay like $5 million to get Chovy when you could take even $1 million and have the most advanced scouting system in the world that could find you the 3 next Chovies in the Korean solo queue ladder before anyone gets them? That would actually be logically, in terms of how you would build a roster, that would be a more logical way to make it, I think.
Yeah. I definitely
What do you think?
2.3 mil for Huni, that money can be spent in a very different way that can give you a stronger team just a year from now.
Even like a bunch of teams in the future. Yeah,
you
did a great job.
Is that actually true or is that just a rumor?
It's
I think that was just a joke, wasn't it?
What, the 2.3 mil?
No, the role swapping to mid.
Role swapping to mid. So here's the thing. There's actually truth in it. So we can go team by team. We can start with Clutch, and then we can add other teams to it, and then we can talk about all the rumors regarding it. So from what I heard, other team or Dignitas, even in past seasons, have looked for different top laners. So the thing that happens is when you look for a different top laner, usually the first thing the org will suggest is, how about we trade, right? So if I'm Dignitas and then I go to, let's say, like a TSM, right, and tell them, I want Broken Blade. And then the first thing TSM would say is, okay, you can have Broken Blade, but give us money, and we want Huni in return. And then Clutch goes, no, I'm going to keep
give
Huni.
us money and we'll keep,
I'm going to keep Huni.
Okay.
And then TSM's like, why? What the fuck? And then Dignitas kind of has to show their cards a little bit.
Oh, so then they figure out he must be going to play as well. So
then
unless
he's
he's a
gonna
sub,
show
which is
mid,
unlikely for that contract, he must be a starter. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's happened in past off seasons where Dig or Clutch or whatever you want to call them has looked for other top laners while still holding on to Huni's contract. So
you think basically that if they'd have found the right top laner, they would have maybe made this move like 2 or 3 years, well, a year or two ago.
Yeah, if they found the right top laner, because Huni's been very interested in playing mid lane ever since that one tank meta, and then after SKT, where like on SKT he was a good boy and he played majorly tanks, and at Worlds he played a little bit more carry, but I think he realized like if I play top lane, there's going to be times where I'm going to have to play tank, and I'm very beholden to jungle. And mid lane is way more suiting to my personality and my skill set. I think he made that conscious decision a while ago, and then he's just been looking for a good time to switch over, and it just hasn't happened.
Well, I got nothing wrong with people role swapping, right? Because I mean, I've been there. I've seen people do it. Perks literally just switched to mid from mid to AD carry, went to the World Finals, right? So there's definitely clear case studies of where you can role swap and be a good player. But to pay someone that astronomical amount of money before he's done the role swap, these guys just have to have the largest like war chest in the world or something like that, where 2.3 million is nothing to them. Because I don't know about you guys, but that's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
At least I'd be pretty happy with 2.5 million. And I think things that teams could do better on is spending more money and having a better infrastructure as far as coaches go. I believe at least in sports, almost always the coaches are one of the highest paid positions between the coaches and the players. And that's the exact opposite in LCS, and I imagine other games as well, where the coach is the least paid person in every game. And it's hard for coaches to have respect. Obviously, they need to have years of pedigree or like to show that they're good. But, you know, they're the ones that are controlling the direction of the team, making sure your team is good. Why are they the ones being paid the least, right? I feel like once that dynamic changes, coaches get more respect, they become better, then teams will see a larger improvement, because that's what you look to a coach for, right? If I want to improve as a player, sure, I can go do things on my own, but I want to be able to talk to a coach and be like, hey, what can I do to be better? And then they're supposed to be able to tell me what we can do to be better. But right now, that's just not a thing. And they're getting paid, I don't know, some are getting paid more than others.
I hope I did that for you, Hai, when I coached you.
I mean, I liked you as a coach. I always said that. Only you coached only for 2 weeks, and then you got banned, and I was just like, what the hell is going on with Golden Guardians?
Okay, well...
By the way, even though you said before you don't have a problem with people role swapping, you gave the examples, it's pretty rare people role swap to mid and become really good. Like, mid is a pretty hard position. It's actually been the most pivotal position, arguably, in League of Legends history.
People switch away from mid. It's not going to be
hard to do, to switch to that role. Isn't that like a very specialized role? Do you have to play like 10 champions at a time or whatever?
I can't imagine Huni being a good mid laner, not because of his mechanics or anything like that. He's definitely a talented mechanical laner. I've seen his laning phase. He's super good at it. But mid lane is more than just about laning. There's a lot that goes on in mid, and some people are better at it than others. And I don't know, it's just kind of a different mindset, right? It's easy to go from mid to something else because you're kind of in the center of everything. But when you're going from an island like top lane, where sometimes you just won't see your jungler, or you won't see the rest of your team the entire game. Mid lane, you have to see the rest of your team. You're going to have to be involved in the Rift Herald fight. You're going to have to be involved in the Dragon fight. If their mid laners diving bottom and you're not there, you're doing something wrong. You have to be involved in these plays. And for a lane like top lane that is generally more isolated than the other ones, it's a huge mindset change. So I'm sure his mechanics are there. If he has a good coach that can teach him how to play mid, I think he could be a good mid laner. But you've seen things like Piglet, who I think has amazing mechanics. Go from AD carry, go to mid lane, and then he's a decent mid laner. His mechanics are fine, but he just doesn't know how to play mid. It's just kind of different, right? So I don't know.
Another big thing on this is like in the history of Huni, when he's been the most successful, I would say is Fnatic and SKT. And in both Fnatic and SKT, Huni didn't get its way. And Huni was under someone that had more power than him, more leadership than him, and he had to listen, most notably in Fnatic, Yellowstar and Daler, in SKT, Goma and Faker. Like, he played a secondary role. And when Huni had full control, like the Immortals roster, like Huni got to do pretty much everything that he wanted. Like Dylan didn't have much power there. Or the Echo Fox roster. Like, those teams were bright for a little bit. They couldn't adapt and they crashed and burned. We can talk about Dignitas as a success as a roster, and they've been like mildly successful, and I'm sure Huni has a huge voice from the way they play. But like giving Huni this much control and this much guaranteed money and ability to go mid lane and pretty much like dictate whatever he wants to do makes me really scared that this is going to be a very expensive disaster.
I even get worried just in terms of, like, obviously at the moment I haven't seen him play, so I have to speculate how he would play. But if I think about how Huni played the top lane, like, I even thought, I always used to say, like, I understand why people criticized him because he clearly wasn't the best, and a lot of the Korean really good players had basically the same strengths but none of the weaknesses that he had as a player. Understandable, he didn't come up through the Korean system, he came up in Europe and North America. But one thing I would say is a flaw if he's going to go mid lane is even some of his weaknesses as a top laner, where he always wants to pressure, he always wants to have the winning lane, he always wants to try and solo kill, that can even work in your favor even when you're fucking up. because you put back pressure on, you draw the jungler up, you draw attention away, like you draw it away from the rest of the map, away from the mid, and away from the bot lane. That it doesn't happen in the mid lane. Like, yeah, certainly you can draw the jungler to your lane, but in the season 9, when you push up your lane and you don't know, you're not an expert on where the jungler always is and where everyone map position is and what's going on in Fog of War. We all know, how many times have you seen a Fog of War gank where the jungle comes in the top side, the support comes in the bottom, and they just gang bang you before you can get in the middle of the lane? Like, you could get really exploited in mid lane if you don't have the right mentality. And so I feel like Hooney's got to like completely reset and start over if he wants to become a new. He can't think he can be the Hooney of the top lane in mid lane. I don't think. I think that would be a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. I think in 20. Go ahead.
You're teaching someone how to play the lane from like almost 0.0, right? His mechanics are there. Well, why not do that with someone different? You know, like why not just work with a person that actually plays that role and actually try to help him improve? Because regardless of what player you pick, you have to teach both of them how to play that lane. And as far as mechanics go, I'd be hard pressed to believe that Hooney's the best mechanical player that you could possibly find to play mid, right? I'm sure there are plenty of other players that are at least similar level in mechanics that would be easily teachable as well. So I don't know. I don't run those teams, and I hope they do well. I hope every player does well because I always support the players. But some teams got to lose, and then those might be the teams that spend the most money.
To round out a little bit on what's going on with Dignitas and rest of the rumors surrounding them, Lyra is gone. He put out a free agency post, but he won't be re-signing with them from what I know. They try to get Haunter top. And there's been like inklings of rumors about Sneaky going to Dignitas, but I think like their end goal and their dream scenario was Haunter top, Korean jungle, Huni mid, with Vulcan Cody bot lane. And that actually could have been, if that's what they end up with, that's a decent team, but that's an extremely expensive team considering what Huni's salary is. And if the buyout for Vulcan is 1.5 mil of relatively unproven NA prospect, I can't imagine what the buyout for Haunter is. Like, if we're just like going by this is Vulcan's buyout, this should be Haunter's buyout. Haunter's buyout should be higher than that. So
yeah, in theory.
This team would be mad expensive, and it's not even like a guaranteed number 1 roster. And especially with how TL is, like I just can't fathom why a team would want to spend to be like top tier, but not actually be number 1.
Fathom, but yeah, we get the point.
Yeah.
Right. Dude, I hope Sneaky doesn't go to Dignitas. That'd be so weird, man. He's been on C9 for like 7 years now.
Just the branding's whack, isn't it? Like Dignitas Sneaky. Really?
I mean, he used to be a Dignitas 10.
He used to be Dignitas Sneaky Castro. He used to play for Dignitas
but
long time ago.
That's not what he's known for, right? Like, imagine him not being in C9 anymore. That's weird. He's like the most popular player on the team by like a large amount. You lose a huge fan base if you lose Sneaky. It'd be pretty crazy.
Duncan, what's your take on that roster, that theoretical Dignitas roster? Haunter, Korean Jungle, Huni, Cody, Vulcan.
The problem with the roster is, like, first of all, it hasn't got the 5th player. Like, you can't just say Korean jungle as though that's like...
Let's throw in...
you know what I mean? Like, the difference between Tarzan and then, like, the 28th best Korean jungle is pretty big, I'm going to guess. So, are we talking about someone out of solo queue or someone lower down? I'm assuming it's not, like, a top-tier LCK player, right?
All right, let's say Huni picks someone. Like, let's throw a name out there. Like
just a guy he knows from the lower levels or something. Okay.
Like, maybe Mowgli coming back from... I doubt he's staying on Vitality. Like, that's a name we can throw out there. Peanut's always been wanting to come to NA. Peanut plus Huni was going to be a thing on Echo Fox, so that's something that's possible. So let's say Peanut. That's actually not a bad one.
Like you say, it's in theory it's not a bad one. The problem is, like, all those players are fine, but then so much of it will then rely on how good Huni is. Mm-hmm. Like, if Huni's terrible, it doesn't matter how good the rest of those players are. You probably can't have a top team. So the problem is you put all the risk actually in, I think, one of the most important positions. So I either feel like that would either be like the 3rd best team in LCS or it would be like the 9th best team in LCS. Like, I don't think there's probably an in-between on that.
Yeah. And if you have a roster like that and you spent that much,
I actually like the players. I've got to say, like, I don't like the cost of it. I think the cost is ridiculous. Although, to be fair, this is one of the reasons we actually referenced this before the show, is because, like I said, if that sets the tone for where the market was at in this offseason, at the beginning of the offseason, that implies that other teams are also going crazy with numbers and that, like, actually, even if we think this is an insanely overpriced team, maybe there's another team out there that's going to cost twice as much. Like, that's not impossible. So I would just say it doesn't feel like it's worth the money. Like, I would say on paper, if you spend that money, you should be expecting to win LCS and go to Worlds. Like, you should be having a massive performance, whereas I can't promise that'll happen. But I would just say, like, I actually think if you ignore the price tags, it's a pretty decent assembly of players. Like, I even think they've done a good job picking players where maybe their name isn't at the highest point now, but their game definitely could be. Like obviously someone like Haunter, he could be like the second best top laner if he had the right team. I don't think I think that's impossible. Cody Sun's revived his whole career in clutch. Vulcan actually is a pretty good rising talent. I think there's decent potential for that team to actually be pretty good. I think. I'm just not that big a Hoonie fan anyway, so
Okay.
You'll win in mid lane.
So connecting that, let's go to another team, Golden Guardians. So obviously connected because of the Haunter maybe going to Dignitas. So the rumors around Golden Guardians is they're letting go of Froggen, they're letting go of Ole, and they might get Golden Glue. So those are like the current Golden Guardians rumors.
Oh, wait a second. One question.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is the. I'm gonna have to type it in here because it's a secret.
Wait, so there's only Golden Glue in that roster so far?
Well, there's other things that can happen, but those are the rumors.
Look at this. Read what I put there, and then tell me if that's known and if it can be referenced. Because it's something I'd heard. Had you heard something similar?
Yeah. We can't. Do you want to? You can reveal it.
Well, the problem is, if you say Golden Glue's going, people are going to assume that he's going to be Golden Glue, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, let's do it under the. Let's just do it on the correct.
This is not in any way confirmed. This is just something in the air that happened to come by. So basically, when you hear that, you're going to think, right, Golden Glue, the mid laner. But I actually heard he's going to roll up to support. Now, listen, hi, you have some experience in that. Is it difficult to roll up to support?
I don't necessarily think so. They kind of have a lot of shared things at the very least. You can play a lot of mages as support as you can mid. Oftentimes, they kind of share characters that you can play in both roles. I think if you were to role swap from mid to any other role, the easiest one would be support. Not because support is easy to play by any means, but because you share a lot of the same skills that you need in both roles. So I think Golden Glue could definitely be a really good support. He's been around as a mid laner for so long now, and maybe I think that makes sense to me. Like if he can be on LCS team permanently, or at least starting on LCS team consistently as a support, it's better for his career to do that, right? Because he's been playing mid for about as long as I have, I believe. I'm pretty sure I've played versus him back in 2013, 2014. And he hasn't gotten starting time on the LCS roster yet. And at this point, you have to really ask yourself, why is that? Is it because he's not good enough? Is it because teams aren't going to take a chance on him? Whatever the case, he has to start thinking about his future and how can he play in the LCS, because that's what every player wants. And if it's support, I think that makes sense. I'm pretty sure he could be a good support.
Let me caveat this just a little bit. It's not like Golden Glue is like, I'm a support player now. It is, I am a mid player, but I am open to it. It's not I am a support player. I am no longer playing mid.
It's more like he just gives you the option of his two roles that you play, depending on who's that.
Right. I am very open to this. Yeah, he's support curious.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Actually, that's also a move where the area I could see that working is, I actually even think if you think of Golden Glue's personality, he's more of he seems more of like a supportive element in a team. He's not a very forthright person. He's not the sort of guy who's like, I'm the best player, give me the champion and I'm going to carry this motherfucking game. No, he's more of like a laid back personality. So I even think that might fit him better. And I personally always thought whenever anyone has the career storyline that Golden Glue does, which is like in scrims, people are saying he's great. In Challenger, he's always doing well and showing his skills off. If he goes to Korea, he does all right on the ladder. But then when you get into LCS, you never quite live up to that. That implies it's mental. Like, obviously, the skill is there, but you just can't do it on stage for whatever reason. Like, you lack confidence, or you just, something rattles you and you can't play properly. Support, in theory, is going to be less of a demanding role in that raw respect. Like, it's not about the raw mechanical moves you make. So I could even see that actually helping someone if he has those issues at all. It should offset it a little bit, I think.
Usually,
do you actually think that's a good move?
Usually it's because the difference that you'll see that people perform in scrims compared to stage is 99% of the time due to their aggressiveness. Oftentimes people will be more aggressive in scrims than they will in live matches, and that changes their entire laning phase, right? If he's going to contest me, for example, say I'm laning for Golden Glue, right? And we're in a scrim match, he'll contest me on every single CS that there possibly is. He'll walk up at me like, hey, you want this CS? You're going to have to trade me for it, right? And that puts a lot of pressure when you're in a scrim. But then you go into a stage game, and he's not pressuring you on the CS anymore. He's still playing fine. He's not losing lane, but he's not challenging me on this CS. He's not challenging me on this tank creep. He's not challenging me as much as he is anymore. And then that amount of pressure that changes from a stage game to a scrim game, that's almost always the reason why people say people play differently. It's due to the fact that they're not challenging you every single CS anymore. You have to be willing to, I guess, die to be aggressive at times, you know? Like, if you want to be the best player, like Faker and things like that, and Jensen, you have to challenge people on the CS. You have to challenge them, be like, hey, I'm better than you. You want this, yes, you have to fight me for it. And the good players do that to you. But when you play other players and you don't do that, there's a large skill difference in that. And I think that's just kind of what he lacks at times. He doesn't challenge you as much as he does.
By the way, did you say any other names of that team? Was it only Golden Glue?
Ole leaving and Froggen leaving.
Ole Froggen out.
Yeah.
Hunts are also possible. And then the rest of it is just wide open at the moment. No one knows the rest of the squad.
I mean, rest of it, they could all stay. They could all leave. These are just the ones like that where the information has been out.
Do you know, by the way, since obviously you in the past had connections with the organization or just generally in the scene, is it known, right? Obviously, one of the things that I always thought was bullshit was like the year that High was on the team, for example, when they tried to say in all the interviews that the whole premise of the team was like to grow NA talent and all the rest of it. It's like, well, that's what you say when you couldn't get all the big foreign free agents and then you decide to get NA players. Like, that's a clever way to spin it to sound like that was your first choice, even though from what I'd heard personally, that wasn't their first choice for that team. And it was just plan B, basically. And it was a way to brand yourself as well as a new team if you're not going to be the best. And then obviously this year, they tried to go like halfway between the two. So they had like some rising talent players and then they had some bigger names but are in not a good spot. Is Golden Guardians, do you think, as an org, ever going to be the team that tries to be like a Team Liquid, Cloud90? Are they ever going to make like the big team with all the good players? Are they going to try and be more of a budget team, do you think?
So internally, what is it? From what I heard, this year, they viewed it as like a championship push. Like the pieces they picked up, and that was like their internal voice. Like, this is our championship push. Like, we want to be a championship level team. Okay. So I thought it was pretty ridiculous. And considering where they ended up, I think they should like kind of readjust their viewpoint on where they're at and where every other team is at. And I wouldn't mind them going Golden Glue mid, not Golden Glue support. And that's a good brand fit. And they can like, some years you just have to chill. And this is a year where I feel like you have to chill just due to where the buyouts are. Like, you're either in the midst of all the buyouts and you're trying to get a championship team, or you're kind of staying out of it and you need to, you know, take a few steps back. Maybe this isn't our year. Like, the buyouts are way too crazy and there aren't players available. Let's invest more into scouting. Let's invest more into coaching staff. So I hope that's what they're doing. But it was not that way last year.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on that, I?
Well, in my experience with Golden Guardians, I was under the premise when we were first speaking together, I was talking with Kirk and Loco and all of them. And the idea was to have an NA roster. Like, the roster wasn't set in stone yet. They were asking my opinion on what I thought about this player, what I thought about this player. And the goal was, you know, to develop and get stronger synergy and build up our players and see how we look a year from now. We weren't expected to win a championship. I was told literally that, you know, this year we're working on just practicing. We're working on getting better. It's great if you make it to playoffs, but it's not the end of the world if you don't. You know, just work out your best to get better. But then 2 weeks into the season, our head coach gets fired and let go from the team. We have an interim coach for the rest of the split. And don't get me wrong, he wasn't a bad person or anything like that, you know, but he doesn't have the qualifications to be a head coach nor the pedigree to do it. So it's like, we're not even given the correct coaching staff to improve as a team, and we're not even given the time to improve as a team. I had maybe 2 months with those guys to play together, and like, sure, we did 4-14 or something like that, which is pretty bad. Don't get me wrong, but you know, we went into it with me being told that, you know, we're working on getting better over the course of the year. We're going to build a strong coaching roster. We're going to get a good foundational background for all these players to get good, because you have players like Deathly who are super young and very talented. We had Lorlo, we had Matt, contracts. They're all 19 years old or something like that now, maybe 20, 21, I don't know. But they have a lot of time to be better players, and they have the potential there, given the right coaching structure, given the right infrastructure. But the results that the team wanted were too high for what we had at the moment, right? You put those 5 players together with me, you're asking them to win a world championship. That's not going to happen. Why? It's just because we're not good enough yet. Can we get there? Maybe. I'm not sure. But we don't even have the coach to bring us there in the first place. So not only was the expectations supposed to be low, they were low. And then I get told that they're changing the entirety of what they want to do. Now they want to win worlds. Now they want to be the best. And then I see that I'm replaced by Mickey. And it's like, yeah, you can make an argument he's better than me mechanically, but what, they ended up 5 games total that they won, so 1 entire game over me. It's just like, I don't know. Well, what do you guys really want to do? You know, do you want to improve your players and help them learn to be better players, or are you trying to just import players in and win LCS? Because those are 2 very different things, you know. And it doesn't seem like they knew what they wanted. They kind of wanted a bit of both, and I don't think that's how that works.
By the way, when you, because actually it's one thing I've never heard you address very often in public, is when they replaced you in that way, where it was like last minute out of nowhere, basically. Didn't you feel like a bit burned by that? It was kind of a bit disrespectful. Like at that point in time, you were a pretty like legendary figure within the NA scene. Some people would even say you'd taken a step down by going and starting a new squad with them. It's kind of a bit, wasn't the way they handled it a bit bullshit?
I think it definitely could have been handled better. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen the video where they said, we had 4 exceptional players, now we have 5. I thought that was pretty BM for them to throw me under the bus. Like, I felt like I handled the entire organization pretty professionally, always held good terms with them. I stayed on good terms. I think it was just a blunder of what he said. I don't think Hunter's actually, meant it the way he said it. At the end of the day, I lost nothing from that in the sense of, publicity. It only made me look better. I thought it was kind of depressing that I wasn't given the full year to play with the team that I was told. But, whether that be because I was too expensive or I didn't live up to what they expected out of me, I'm not entirely sure. It's a business at the end of the day, and I'm sure Mickey was a lot cheaper than I was. So, they're allowed to do what they want. I got no ill will against them.
Okay. Right, Loco, we've actually almost never on this show, or actually that much even in private, ever talked about the time you're on Golden Guardians, because for obvious reasons, Loco doesn't bring that topic up. So who knows why. But no, the thing I want to ask is this, right? That's actually the angle I'd never thought of when you were the coach for Golden Guardians, is because you basically never got to properly play LCS with them. Like it was basically done within a few weeks. That must have actually sucked, because if people think of the context of your career, when you were the coach of TSM, was the period where you were trying to transition Bjergsen into being the shot caller. And people might understand, first of all, he never became like a super duper shot caller anyway. But, he had his teething problems. Like on the one hand, he was trying to be the best mid laner in the lane and as a player and be a shot caller as well and learn it all and be in a different culture. So in light of that, when you got the chance to actually have High on your team, sure, the overall roster wasn't as good, but that must have been like a super appealing prospect, right? Like that aspect's taken care of. And also in theory, if you have good shot calling, it could elevate other players who aren't thought of as good to be more effective in the game. Like it must have been a pretty exciting prospect, right, Loco?
So everything I talked about Golden Guardians just now are stuff I heard externally, right? And stuff I don't know internally. On that aspect, I definitely do want to talk about it with you in a future show. In February, that'll be 2 years after the Golden Guardians, the whole thing is done, and that's when the NDA is over, and I will comfortably and openly talk about it in February with you.
All right. What a weird politician answer that was that he just did that. That sounded prepared or something. What the hell? Okay, fair enough.
I mean, in my experiences with the short time that Loco was a coach, I saw what he was trying to do. He had a really big focus on trying to improve Deftly as a player, because Deftly is definitely a good player, but he did have these limits that he needed to overcome to be the best AD carry in the world. You compare him to a player like Uzi, there's clear differences, right? And I saw that Loco was trying to, tell him, hey, you're really good at the game. I recognize you're good, but you need to do this to become Uzi, right? And I thought, given enough time, I think that would be a really good thing that could happen. Like, I thought what Loco was doing as a coach was a pretty good thing, but we never really got to experience it. So, not ideal.
That's actually also one of the reasons I think that coaching, especially in NA, is so important to get a good structure in place, because there's so many NA prospects or the best NA players where they have clear strengths that could make them one of the best players, but then they always have a flaw. So for example, you were saying there about Deftly, he clearly has strengths. There was times where he looked like he was going to be the next really good player, like Double Lift, Cody Son, but the flaws held him back for a long time. It still held him back when he was in Golden Guardians the year later. I think of Blabber. Blabber has games where he looks amazing. He has games at Worlds where after 10 minutes, the amazing part goes away and he's just feeding. So these players, that's a sign that the talent is there, but it's not directed or it's not polished, put it that way. It's very, very raw.
So I'll talk about what I actually did with Deftly. I don't think that's a touchy subject. So the whole thing LS does, right? LS talks about using F keys, you need to click more, you need to do all this. I actually think that's bullshit for about 95% of the people, and also 95% of people that play League of Legends. But for pro players, that's actually super important. Your base mechanics, how you take in information, where you click, how you dodge skill shots, how you move your mouse, all those stuff, or how your camera control is, all those stuff are really important. So when LS does that for pretty much everyone, it's worthless. LS is teaching players in like gold or diamond to do this.
Yeah, but here's the other thing, Loco. That's also part of the like appeal of it, isn't it? Is that you feel like you're getting coached by the pro coach, and he's treating you as though you were a pro. So I even think part of that's almost like it's not an act, but it's part of the appeal of getting LS coaching, isn't it?
If you're a gold or diamond player, there's way bigger things to work on and like way much more things that are problematic. But those are the things I worked on with Deathly. I would show him POVs of better players and stuff he was doing different in team fights, how to use your spacebar so the screen is locked on you, and how to unspacebar to get information, and when you should do it, and when other players are doing it, how you should be hitting skill shot, how you should press on every CS.
Do you use the spacebar when you're doing team fights or something? Do you lock the camera for that or something? So what would the concept be for when you would use it?
You do it to cut movements, right? So whenever you use a flash, right, your champion's in the center, and now your champion's not in the center. But when you use space flash bar, your moves it with you, so it saves you like a movement, right?
And then, it keeps your eye trained. You don't lose yourself in the fight, I'm assuming, right? Yeah.
And also, whenever things are coming to you, and then you have spacebar locked, and then you're moving, it's a lot easier to dodge. And also, when your champion's in the center with spacebar, you can click a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left to get them to wiggle effectively. But when it's off center, you have to click all the way here, and then just right here. So there's little things that help you when your camera is locked, but you have to train it, right? If you're consciously thinking about it, then it's taking away from your gameplay. And you need to build it in, and you need to make it an absolute habit. And that's what I really wanted to help with Deathly, because there were bad habits that he had. If he fixed it properly, he would become a much better player. Yeah. But initially, you take a small dip because you have to like build all these into habits before you get better. But that was like in the process for Deathly. I'm not sure how much of it he continued through with, but it's like just it's very advanced, but also very basic thing you need to make part of your gameplay.
Right, one question. It's an obvious question. Why weren't you helping high learn mechanics?
Well, the thing is, like with high, there's other stuff. There's other stuff that I want to work with high, right? Regarding shot calling, and high played a huge voice on our team. High I would say it's like 80%, 70% of communication. And if we were playing tomorrow with our lives on the line, it should be that way. But if you want to improve overall as a team, stuff I asked out of high is ask more questions and let other people participate, and kind of bug other people to talk and bug other people to think, because Matt, Lorlo, Contracts, Deathly, they were just getting led by Hybe, and long term that wasn't going to be good for the team. Long term, High needed to focus more on his part, and High needed to give some of the shot calling responsibility away to other people while still making the biggest calls possible, right? But yeah, that was what I wanted to do with the team, and that was I was personally working with High, but none of that came into development because the time was so short.
That's a topic actually from the Golden Guardians era as well that I wanted to ask about, because that was obviously the reason they claimed that they removed you, was like, even though in the spring they made it sound like you're essential because you're going to help all these young talents grow, then by the summer they were like, but if High's there, doesn't he also limit them? Because then he's going to shot call everything. And then they made it sound like they were just bots and you were just moving chess pieces. The problem I have with that is, like, first of all, I've always thought the idea that you can like teach people shot calling, it's not a lot of people aren't cut out for it. And a lot of people, if they're starting at zero, like they absolutely have no skills at it, even if they get better, like they're never going to be at High's level, put it that way, right? Like obviously you were very, very apt at that role. And then the other angle as well for me is, I mean, just look at the team that just won Worlds now. A team that won Worlds is a team that didn't have the best mid laner, but he was the best shot calling mid laner, and he shot called the whole map and won the World Championship. Like, I get the logic, like in the future we want these players to do it, but at the time that you were doing it, surely you shot calling is better than giving half the role to whoever's the top laner or something. What do you think on that topic?
I would say that, as people talk about things, it kind of gets more and more blown up. Like, don't get me wrong, I did do a large portion of shot calling throughout the teams I have, and yes, my mechanics weren't like Faker level or something like that, but there's a large world of difference of like my mechanics being that much worse than someone else's, which wasn't true. I could lane perfectly fine against every single mid laner that I played versus. Sure, some might be better than me, fine, whatever. But it's not like I was just garbage mechanics and god tier shot calling. It's not like it's an S and like an F, right? It'd be more like an A plus and like an A minus, whereas someone else would be A. So I think there's strengths to having every kind of player. You don't want every player on your team just be some kind of mechanical god. Well, I actually won't have anything wrong with that. If you just have 5 mechanical gods, that's pretty cool.
But not only mechanical gods, of course.
Right. But it's hard to get that in the first place. You need some kind of leadership. When you watch Dune B lane, it's not like he's a bad laner or a bad player. He plays differently. Not traditional way, like, he's not going to challenge you on every CS, be like, hey, you can't get this CS. No, he's like, okay, this CS is like this, whatever. I'm going to do this instead and get advantage for my team. It's just a different way of playing. And then people always just, a casual viewer will look at the scoreboard, see that I'm at 80 CS, see my enemy mid laner at 100 CS, be like, oh, he's losing lane. Yes, I lost lane, but what did I gain in return for that? I got my bot lane 20 CS ahead. I got my jungler 2 camps ahead. So yes, I'm behind, but my team is ahead overall. And it's just a different way of playing the game. But it kind of makes you look like a bad player when you play that way, you know?
Sure.
UNB is definitely one of the best mid laners in the world. He's just won worlds, you know? So it's just like, there's more than one way to play the game, and people just kind of just care about the KDA. They care about the CS. I want to be a superstar. Give me the pentakills. And in a team game like League of Legends, I don't necessarily think that's the only way to play the game, right? I think there's more than one way to play the game. And I've always been a person that, like, what can bring me the closest way to victory? Because me being 10 CS ahead of my mid laner, going to lead me to victory. Am I that much better than Bjergsen or Pobalt or whatever to bring this advantage, to bring me the W? My answer was almost always no. Am I better than some of them? Sure. But enough to bring that 10 CS over? No. But if I get my team 1,000 gold ahead, is that enough for us to win the game? In most of my cases, the answer was yes. So I would always try to figure out, what can I do to bring my team closer to the victory? And if that means getting my team ahead instead of me, that's what I would do. I imagine there are other players that are that way as well. So it's kind of like, it's not all about you, you know, it's about your team. And at the end of the day, teams are going to be the ones that win the game, not the superstar AD carry. So
Sure.
That's just how I thought about it.
Well, the funny thing is, in the case of you and Doinby in that respect, because as you said, the problem is basically when you give up like individual glory to make the other players have agency in the game, be able to get ahead, potentially be the carry of the game. The problem is it makes you individually look bad. But I would say the area where people can just use like lateral thinking to figure out that you were doing that is when you don't play with those players anymore. It's like when someone has a brilliant jungler like Uni with Rainover. When they separate them, you immediately see like, oh, he was doing some of that, but the other guy was helping a lot as well. He was clearly setting up the game for him, taking away a lot of his weaknesses. Like, I think that's where you'll really notice like the effect of those. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where you don't know what you had till they're gone, unfortunately. It's like the old cliche, I think, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. So final
By the way, Loco, yeah, go on. I have one question for you before I forget.
Go ahead.
Right? Being as you literally just said that G2 would win Worlds for the clout and the subs on your stream. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you have no integrity and will do anything for money. So I have one question for you. I'm thinking of ideas here, mate, that are going to make you, pop off, get entertainment, get some Reddit clout. Mm-hmm. So I've got an idea for you right now. How much do we have to crowdfund? How many subs have to be given before you will do a live 1-hour coaching session where LS coaches you as you play AD carry on ranked?
Okay. I'll play at 2K.
I would watch that video. I would watch the whole fucking video. And then, by the way, I get to coach LS before he coaches you. I can't tell what's going on this motherfucker. Like, I want this harsh. Give it. Right. Yeah, exactly.
I have to get LS's consent, but I will do that at 2K.
I think that sounds sick.
Yeah, at 2K stuff, I will let LS coach you.
And by the way, what I'm going to tell him is I want him to give you the full, like, when he brings over those people who are like no-name, like European challenger players, and he tells them basically, like, he tries to make out like he's that guy out fucking, what was the name of that guy out Kill Bill, like My Pay or whatever, Pai Mei or whatever. You know, that guy was like the evil, like Kung Fu master, and they send that woman, the Uma Thurman character, to him. And he's like, the way he trains her to be amazing, he's like super harsh with her to like push her to her limits. So
what's that drum movie? The drumming movie where the guy is really mean to the, what is it? I forget what it is. But
Whiplash.
Yeah,
yes.
Whiplash.
You mean the American one? I thought you were talking about another Chinese movie. No, so anyway, what I will tell him to do basically is give you that experience. I want him to do that shit where like he brings up paint and he's showing you like, you misclicked 1 pixel. If you click this pixel, like I want him to go that in depth because that was what the entertainment's going to be, Loco.
Okay.
And I want to see how you'll hold together. You think you could handle it? You wouldn't get rattled?
Oh yeah, of course. I had worse coaches and like my dad. I did sports with my dad and I did math with my dad and like those are fucking worse. Anyways, final question regarding Golden Guardians before we move on to a different team's offseason. If the rumors are true and they do let go of Froggen, do you think they gave your boy a fair shot in the year? And do you think it's right for them to move on?
I don't. Here's the thing. Like, I don't think they will have a better team without Froggen than they had with him. Mm-hmm. But I also know 2 massive problems Froggen has behind the scenes is, first of all, he is not fucking cheap, by the way. Just like my boy Flame. If they play in LCS, let's believe they're getting paid in LCS, even if they're on the worst team. Like, they're asking for big, big salaries, partly because, and this is the other flaw they have, unfortunately, even though they are individually good players, in their minds, they're still the players they were 4 years ago. So the other problem is they also have like very weird thoughts on like what teammates to play with and stuff. So I would just say that like I could certainly see why if you thought you could get someone like 10% less good than Froggen, but for half the money, I would go for that move. It's not as Golden Guardians, since you're not going to win LCS now, it's not a bad move. And then in terms of like what happens for Froggen now, that's the problem is assuming he wants to stay in NA, which is what I'd heard. It's just going to be the same as when he joined this Golden Guys. He's going to have to go join probably a bad team, but he's going to get paid because he's going to be the big name. He's going to be what Sneaky would be if he goes to Digging Sass. He's the branded name that everyone knows and loves, but it's not going to be a good team probably. So, like, I'll watch just as a player I like to watch, but I don't have like championship aspirations. I doubt that's going to happen.
I think it makes sense for both parties. As you said, Froggen is expensive, and he wants to win, and he wants to play. And Golden Guardians, I don't think can really put the right pieces around him. And I also don't know what jungler Froggen would work best with. That's always been like a really big question for me. I think there's always been problems with Froggen and his jungler in terms of being on the same page or both being happy. And I just don't have a correct answer to what would be the right jungler for Froggen. And his stream is...
Meteos. Sorry, what? Did you say something?
Meteos Froggen. Hi, what's your take on that? Do you think that would work?
I'd probably one of the better pairings, yeah, for sure. Because... I don't know, Meteos is a pretty chill jungler to play with. I mean, he has his own way of wanting to play the game, which is fine, but he's not gonna like rage at you or anything like that, and he's pretty willing to listen. Like, if you tell him, hey, I need you on this wave, he'll be there, you know? But if you don't tell him that, he's gonna be doing his own thing. So like, I think Froggen's the kind of guy that would tell him, hey, come push this wave in with me. And Meteos got no problem with that. I think that's a pretty strong team. I'd root for a Meteos and Froggen team. Put Sneaky on there too. That'd be fun.
Because here's the thing, Loco. I know you're going to think like, well, these are players that have been known to be like troublesome personalities that don't get along with everyone. But actually, I think that that's an example of where it's like when Bjergsen and Double have played together. Sometimes, or when Jensen and Double have played together now. Sometimes you're like that also because you think the other players around you aren't as good, and so you think that you always know better and that they should just listen to you. If you think the guy really is your equal and you know he's really good at his role, now it's kind of like, cool, don't have to worry about your role. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. So I actually feel like Froggen would love to have a player like Meteos. The reason I say it, no, not even joking, is because I think actually one thing he would like is he doesn't want to micromanage the jungler. You want to micromanage a bad jungler because you have to. But actually, if you're a really good mid laner, especially obviously Froggen loves to lane, you want your jungler to just take care of the rest of the shit, and you don't want to even have to tell him what you're doing. He's going to go and do his own thing, and then, as Hai says, when you do need him or you're going to make a play, then you call him. I think both parties would enjoy that, especially with where they're at in their careers. At the moment, it doesn't look like any of them are going to the best teams.
I'm pretty sure we have a winning record against him. Like with me and Meteos, I'm pretty sure we have a winning record against Froggen, at least back then.
Froggen's win rate in NA just hasn't been good, so... And your win rate in NA has been amazing, so I would doubt if he has a winning record. I'm
speaking from when he was back in Europe, right? Because like if you're talking about people based off of when they were at their prime, like Froggen can never look down on Meteos in any scenario, right? Because I'm pretty sure Meteos has a winning record versus him in LCS and before Froggen was in LCS. So like you can't look down on a player that's beaten you consistently over the years, right? In case that's a problem. I don't know if that's a problem. I've never played with
that would be interesting. Okay. All right, let's go to a different team. Give me a name, and then I'll let you know like some of the public rumors, and if there's something I can reveal. Okay, TSM. So this one is pretty interesting because there's been a lot of names put up for the AD carry position, right? Reckless, Upset, Kabe, like those are like the really big names that are going on.
So you're saying Sven is gone?
I think that's pretty publicly well known, and I would be shocked if Sven wasn't gone. Like the moment after they lost Gauntlet, I would be crazy.
I heard basically he's going to go back to Europe, and actually a bunch of the teams, as we've talked about in past shows, do want him. Like some people do think he can be rehabilitated, and they don't look down too much on the NA problems, basically.
So I will actually give a counter rumor to that in a little bit. So from what I heard something different. But yeah, those are the three big names up for TSM. Kabe, Reckless, Upset. It looks like Reckless, Upset not happening, and Kabe is like the biggest one. It's a rumor that Travis talked about. It's a rumor I heard separately. And
by the way, I can even add in, because this will actually corroborate it, the reason also why Reckless is off the table is, I know this isn't public, but people have heard like about Reckless had some issues in Fnatic this year. The implication I heard from a number of people is eventually it literally became an ultimatum. It had to be Reckless or Youngbuck. And guess what? If you saw today's news, Youngbuck is not in Fnatic anymore. So that sounds like they picked Reckless. Therefore, logically, I'm assuming he's not going to TSM. Although I would obviously love it if Reckless was on TSM. It's like, let's just combine all the narratives of the people I flamed together. Just make it easier. Just save time. Could make the segment 10 minutes long.
So there's
25.
Travis rumors, there's Loco rumors, and then there's also a Fionn rumor. So Fionn tweeted 2 Danish stars together, and that's why you should watch their show on November 18th. And then
Svenskeren and Jensen.
Yeah, Svenskeren and Jensen, that's something that could happen on a team.
That could be one. Or Sven and Svenskeren maybe.
Sven and Bjerg could also happen, and also Kabe and Bjerg could also happen, right? So there's multiple ways where 2 Danish stars could link up, but I think it's obvious like that it's probably TSM. I don't have any inside info from TSM, but from all the like rumorings and what I heard from external sources, it seems like Kabe to TSM is.
Is it implied that TSM keeps Broken Blade then? By what you just said?
That one is also up in the air. I can see it go either way. From what I understood, the 2 players that TSM were willing to keep were Bjerg and Smoothie. And then that changed completely. And they were on the fence about Broken Blade, but that changed completely, right? Because the new rumor is Biofrost to TSM and Smoothie to CLG. So like there's a lot of ways the roster move can go. And then let me also add in, now a problem for TSM is like jungle, right? And I think they were eyeing if X.
Some would say not just now even, but you know, yeah, keep going.
I think they were eyeing Xmithy in the case that TL gets an upgrade, and then that seems like that's not happening now. So Xmithy is not available. They were eyeing Dardoch, and then now there's rumors about Dardoch starting on Immortals. Maybe even potentially Meteos. That's not something I heard of, but with so many people talking about it.
Loco, stop being silly. They'll never sign Dardoch and Meteos. What are you talking about? Like, Bjergsen will never play with them. I've heard this guy called Yunsop Choi from like Korea or something told me that one time. I think he's like a low-level Twitch Rivals player or something. I'm not
I still don't think Meteos TSM would never happen.
Wait, can you see Meteos playing with Bjergsen? Because is that a thing?
I don't think it will happen.
I don't think that would ever happen for
I think it'd be funny.
reasons. There's
Like
too many reasons
movie.
why that wouldn't happen.
Sure.
And
that
then
are behind it. But
yes, unfortunately, all drama basically implies that'll never happen, right?
Yeah, and then also there's Sven Skaren to TSM. That's also a rumor. There's just been so much rumors.
Man alive, Sven. Come on, bro. Listen, I know they've just cocked you completely in Cloud9, but have some self-respect, mate. Think about how TSM did you dirty at the end there. Like, they just scapegoated you completely. Don't go back. Come on. At least come back to Europe or something, for fuck's sake.
So
don't go back.
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you guys happen to know if there's ever been a successful story of a European AD carry or support coming to NA and doing well? Because hasn't every single EU AD or support that's come to NA kind of, for lack of better terms, shit the bed?
The closest, basically, is when Freeze was on Renegades, and the problem with that is that was a terrible team and he was just the only good player. So obviously as a team, they weren't good, but at the time he was a pretty good player, and that was only, I think, for like 1 year. So I would agree it's barely ever happened. Like, I'm trying to think now of other players that have even gone.
So, because there's been a lot of people that's come over, right? It's not like Sven sucked when he came to TSM, right? But they didn't win anything. They didn't do well. Yellowstar came over. I don't know how well they did, but I don't remember them doing too well, right?
They came second, but then they kicked him straight after that.
Right. So it's to me, it seems like there's been a history of EU players that have come over that are AD carrier support, join the NA team, and then haven't done well and then go back home. So at that point, when do you stop trying to import EU AD carriers and supports? Because if you compare it to mid laners, they've been very successful, right? Bjergs and Jens and Frog and whatever. The mid laners that have come over have done very well, but for the bot lane, none of them have done that well. And I wonder if does that mean anything? Why is that?
Do you have a theory craft for that? Look, I can think of one.
Well, the AD carry role as an import, it's just not a good role to import. I don't think the AD carries that have come over are bad. It's just we're really lacking in solo lanes, so it's really dangerous to take on an AD import. As for support, when a support has to come over, there's been failures and there's been success. And the few supports that have been successful, I know we're going into Korea now with Lustboy and Core JJ, but they have brought their shot calling system with them, and they were a huge part of shot calling and reviews. I know Core JJ is on Team Liquid, and I know for a fact Lustboy is on the old TSM roster. So yeah, I think you need to bring over your shot calling system for a support to work, and AD carry just sucks as an import.
Right, even though this is pure like speculation, like I'm having to draw like with pretty broad strokes here. If I had to guess as to why that might be, where basically players who were successful in the bot lane in Europe just were like way worse in NA, I would guess something along the lines of NA famously is basically about 5v5 team fights and just team fighting. That's what the AD carry's job is. He's supposed to kill people in a team fight. In Europe, classically, it's been the region that's more about like, sometimes you have a side lane comp. Sometimes you're going to explicitly try and do like 1-3-1 all game long. Sometimes you're going to do 1-4. Like there's all these different approaches to the game where it's not just AD carry, stay lane, farm up, and then get a 5v5 team fight. So as a result, one of the reasons I actually personally thought Sven struggled in TSM is I always thought he was trying to do too much for NA. Like he was trying to do like all fucking like advanced like map rotations and like come and help out with like a skirmish somewhere. And it's like everyone in NA was like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, wait until the Baron, bro. 20 minutes. That's when we do the fight. Like, it's like it actually like you're doing too. That's why you get caught out, in my opinion. I think he was trying to be too smart in a sense. And the problem is, it's like I'll give you a concept. One thing that when I was young, I used to naively think, why doesn't everyone just drive like below the speed limit and then you'd never have accidents, right? Like, why should anyone drive at like 60 miles an hour? Like the difference between 40 and 60 in terms of like ability to react and stuff is massive. Famously, that's what they say in terms of like, kids going in front of a car. Like that's why they make school districts like 10 or 20 miles an hour. Well, here's the thing that I actually found that's very interesting is one of the reasons they designed certain speed limits for certain places is because you actually do want everyone to go at the same speed, because that allows everyone to like roughly maneuver around each other. And it doesn't mean like one person's going 70 and the other one's going 30 and he's like trying to avoid and dodge. So along the same lines, I think in a team, you have to be on the same page. You have to have the same vision of how to play the game. So if you come in, and by the way, this could obviously happen with other roles. Like if you're someone who's a split pushing god at top lane from Europe and you come to NA, you're probably going to have a bad time. Like you might be stuck on a tank. You might just be playing normal lanes and then a 5v5. Like that might just not suit your game, unfortunately. Pure theory craft there. Pure theory craft.
So speaking on the jungle role for TSM and jungle offseason in general, from what I heard, it's been really funny because there's a lot of junglers that are open, right? So Xmeti, contract ending, Spenskeren up on like the sales block, Meteos contract ending, Dardoch also on the sales block, Acadian also can look for teams. So there's like been like a tier list of jungler for a lot of the teams.
What were you doing there, by the way? Like I thought at first you were going to like do like 1, 2, 3, and then everything was just this person's on a sales like
everyone's open. Everyone's just available.
The, like, little finger thing about
I'm just showing like number of good junglers that are available, right?
What's the rough number, like 5 or 6 or something?
Yeah, 5 or 6, and then a team is like, okay, we're gonna get Xmeti, and then now Meteos is the best jungler available, and then people are like, okay, I'm gonna get Meteos, and then now Svenskeren is the best jungler available, and then I'm gonna get Svenskeren, and then from up on the totem pole, suddenly a team is like, no, I'm no longer gonna get Xmeti, and then number 2 is like, well, then I want Xmeti. Now Meteos is open, so junglers have been getting jerked around a lot, and I think that's where like TSM's struggling to find like which jungler they can end up with. I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up with anyone between Amazing, Dardoch, Xmeti, Spenskeren, like even Meteos. Like jungle is like really wide open for a lot of the teams, and the tier list of jungler has to get solved out once the free agency actually opens and teams can commit to junglers.
I mean, I guess you can't make a wrong prediction when you guess half of the junglers available to join the team.
Someone's gonna.
But the teams are teams are talking to all the junglers because they realize like people can verbally commit in off season, but verbally commit is getting broken. So now the new rumor is the EG foursome or the C9 foursome to EG, Svenskeren, Deathly, Zeyzo, and Kumo is no longer a thing, and like that can get broken up. So now Spenskeren can get back on the market. So I think there's just a lot of moving pieces within jungle, and teams haven't been able to lock that role down.
Okay, look, I have a question for you. You've been on TSM, you've coached for them, you've worked with Bjergsen. What jungler would you pick for him to play with in this upcoming season? Because obviously TSM has not been at the top like they have been in the past. They haven't taken first in a year and a half, 2 years or something like that. They missed Worlds this year and the previous year, I believe. So what would you do to fix whatever issues TSM is having, considering that Bjergsen is arguably either number 1 or 2 in NA as far as being a mid laner goes. So when you have one of the best players in one of the most pivotal positions in the game, how are you not qualifying for Worlds? How are you not taking first in NA? How do you fix that?
Okay, first of all, I'll answer your question regarding if Bjergsen's the best, why isn't TSM doing well? I think Bjergsen has a very strong idea on how mid lane should be played, and somewhat of a strong idea on how jungle should play around mid lane. And the meta changed completely, right? It used to be jungles are servants of mid lane. Jungles used to be servant of laners. That is no longer... For a lot of teams, they played the game that way and they found success that way. And TSM was one of them. And then now the meta has changed completely, where jungle being ahead early is extremely important with the limited amount of vision and how much power the jungle role has. So it's really important for laners to enable junglers, and I don't think it's a coincidence at all that Doinbi is one of the best junglers at enabling laners, and Tien was one of the strongest junglers, and FPX dominated with that style. So I think that was like the whole core of TSM's problem. So what I would love to see them do this year with their jungle choice is whoever they get, make sure they're a veteran and make sure they can have like a huge voice. So my number one would be Xmiti. Actually, my number one would be Spence Garen, and my number two would be Xmiti. I think Spence Garen.
Didn't you just say that you basically wanted like a hard carry jungler on their team? And
No, strong vocal, like strong idea on what he wants to do, and a veteran. And I think Xmiti or Spence
when you're
Garen,
saying the meta is more focused towards having a jungler ahead, you're kind of saying that you're implying rather that you want someone that is a mechanical monster that's going to lead the game by being ahead. You're implying people like Dardak, not people like Xmiti. Not that Dardak's better than Xmiti or anything like that, but Dardak is more of a player that would pick Graves and be like, hey, give me your mid wave, give me the blue buffs, I'm going to 1v9. Xmiti is like, I'll give you the blue buff, no problem, bro. Like when you're saying that jungle is more of a role that's going to carry, you're implying players like Dardak, not players like Xmiti. I think Spence Garen could play both ends of positions, so he'd be fine.
I'm a little bit afraid of Dardoch on TSM. I think there's a lot of ifs that go into that. And Xmiti, while he's a supportive jungler, he's a jungler with a voice. And I don't think Xmiti gets completely outclassed like playing carry positions. Like he will swap to
he plays a good Graves and stuff like that. It's just not what he's known for, right? People meme on Sejuani or whatever and his Rek'Sai, but those are the most champions that he plays at a high level at least.
I want someone that's proven and someone that Bjerg will have respect for, and Bjerg will allow him to make calls over him and calls that differ from Bjergsen and where Bjergsen would listen. And I can see a problem with the Dardoch relationship, but I don't see the problem with the Spence Garen or the Xmiti relationship if those two ended up as a jungler for TSM.
Do you not think that whichever jungler they decide to move forward with, that there's not going to be some kind of weird power dynamic there? Because you're saying that you want the jungler to be vocal and kind of overpower Bjergsen, but then you got to remember at the end of the day, your career is on the line if you do well or bad. And then the guy that you're arguing with or telling him what to do
is
as part of ownership of the team. That
Exactly,
Is there not a weird power dynamic there? Like, imagine jungling for Bjergsen.
I believe that already happened actually in TSM High, where the jungler used to have a problem with the power dynamic and the mid laner owning part of the TSM team, you know?
Yeah, so then you're just problem. Like, hey, bro, I want this blue buff. You messed up your first wave. You can't push in. What are you doing? You can't be telling me what to do when you're wrong. Like, can you picture yourself saying that to someone who's your boss that you play with? It's kind of super weird, right? Like, I don't know if I could do that. Like, I don't know. That just sounds really weird to me.
Here's the thing.
Like, even if I'm right, I'm going to get screwed at the end, right?
When you say that, though, like, it depends which players we're talking about. Like, if it's Spence Garen, that would be the interesting one, because I actually felt like last time he was in TSM, actually they kind of gave up on letting him have his own say and just told him to be a bot. So I feel like it would be on him to come and be a different Spence Garen when he rejoins. But, like, I will say, like, even though everything you just said makes sense, I don't think that would ever enter Dardoch's brain. Like, I'm pretty sure Dardoch would, like, meet the queen
I
and be
actually
like,
have a perfect analogy for this.
Wait, I'm fucking talking, bro.
Okay.
Like, he'd, like, meet the queen and be like, bow to me and address me as my title. Like he's just not like, you know, he's not that sort of guy, I don't think.
Okay. All right. So there's a girl I used to date way back, like about 6 years ago in Korea. And this was when I was like a pro player and she was just in college. So like the power dynamic was like strongly favored for my end. And I got to do basically whatever I wanted in the relationship. And then she told me she wanted to start a shopping mall, online shopping mall. I thought she was crazy. So
now she's a millionaire, of course.
And then we ended up breaking up. Her shopping mall did so fucking crazy well. So I'm not sure if she's a millionaire, but she did extremely well for herself. And then now
another successful story of the trainer weights.
Now,
what is the story? How does this make sense?
Now, whenever I see her, and now whenever like we see each other in Korea, the power dynamic is really different. Where she gets to do what she wants, and she has vast majority of the control.
He's doing he's contrasting it with Sven Garen and Bjergsen. The idea that, you know, Sven, now that he went elsewhere, Bjergsen saw him be successful and is like, oh, actually, maybe I should let this guy. That's the analogy, right?
Yeah, that's the analogy.
Okay.
I mean,
I think that would make sense.
Like, I don't know if it'll actually be a concern or not with whoever plays the Bjergsen, because, like, I know the guy. He's a super kind guy. I very doubt he'd ever kind of abuse his power in any capacity. But even if he doesn't try to abuse his power, it doesn't change the fact that people still feel that, right? You can be the best person you want, but when you're the boss of someone, they know you're the boss no matter how nice you are to them, how friendly you are to them. So that's something that's always going to be in their mind, even if he, like, uses it or not. It just creates weird power dynamics. I'm surprised that Riot allows that. In fact, they made like a ruling change to allow that, I think.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
You have to be a player in the org for 4 years before you can get ownership.
Yeah.
I mean, that rule's so ridiculous. They may as well have just made the rule like everyone whose name begins with B and J gets like grandfathered and then everyone else just has to wait 4 years. Like, that may as well be the TSM rule. What the fuck's that rule? Yeah. It's only about 4 people it applies to, isn't there?
I was wondering why TSM was so confident that they would keep Bjergsen. And I realized, this has been in the works forever, because in that report, like Riot reported, like we've been working with TSM to get this done. So like TSM knew for such a long time where everyone's like speculating, Bjergsen might leave this offseason. Everyone internally from TSM's like, look at all you idiots. Like, we're working with Riot to give Bjergsen a contract that, he can't say no to.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, this isn't the first time where Riot has done like a rule that specifically benefits 1 or 2 players, right? That's like the 3rd time they've done something for TSM specifically. So, I mean, I don't necessarily have anything that against the rule, because like at the end of the day, like, is it bad to have that rule? I don't think so. I think it's just kind of weird.
You think even if they get Sven or Xmiti or even Dardoch, like they'll still have these like jungle power issues because of all the things we mentioned, or like the new Bjergsen?
I'll tell you one thing I can guarantee you. The great thing if they get Dardoch is one way or another, every week you're going to get entertainment, because you're either going to get it on the LCS broadcast or in TSM Legends. So whichever one it has to be, either he plays well or he doesn't play well, and then I'm tuning into TSM Legends. So they win either way, Loco. I can't lose on that one.
Uh-huh. And go ahead.
Why wouldn't they just try to get like a jungler that doesn't really care about that? Like, imagine you get like an import jungler, right? Does he really care if he has to go back home to Korea? Probably not. So I don't know. Imagine Bjergsen with like a super high tier Korean jungler that's not going to listen to him because he doesn't know what the hell Bjergsen's saying. I think that'd be pretty cool. Bjergsen will win his lane, the jungler will win the jungle, then you have pretty good things going for you. You know, I'd like to watch that.
I will say, I one of my theories as to why they had so many problems with the jungle position isn't just the idea that like TSM and Bjergsen ruined the jungler on purpose. They're evil. It's like, I also think part of it is like everyone joining as a jungler knows the story and knows the reputation, and so as they come in, whether you're actually behaving the way they think or not, they're gonna like be looking for any little tiny warning sign that behavior is happening. And so it's actually one of the reasons, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, why players in sports who are known for like, they get like in basketball, if they get a lot of like personal fouls or they get technical fouls all the time, what happens eventually is they start getting like really unfair ones where they like barely say anything and the ref just like instantly tees them up because he's like waiting for this guy to go off. And even if you don't, like that, it's like it almost like becomes self-fulfilling. So I kind of think that's not a bad approach. Like, the key thing is if you brought over some Korean player, maybe especially one who's like fairly new, maybe he's only played 1 or 2 years, he's not going to know anything about this story. He's not going to know like Bjergsen does it. He's just going to come in and play his role, isn't he?
Or is it time to start importing Chinese players? They won the last 2 worlds, right? And they've been pretty dominant. So
China has some pretty banging junglers at the moment. Like, they have a lot of like carry type junglers.
I mean, they have more players too, right? Like, we're always talking about the lack of talent pool in North America. China has 10 times, 5 times the population.
The only downside is this: is like, I feel like based on what I've heard about the scenes, like this is actually something we talked about in the last Summoning Insight. Like, Chinese players would be the hardest to scout, though, because what LS told us on Summoning Insight was that a lot of people don't even know this, but supposedly within China, like, first of all, one thing I think people probably know about, but like there's a lot of like very unusual like ownership situations where people own multiple teams, but do they own it through other people and stuff that would never be allowed basically if you were in LCS or in LEC. So within that, one of the things a lot of these like very powerful people in the LPL do is they don't just have like the main team and then sometimes like a team in the development league. Sometimes they have like 2, sometimes even more teams. LS said it can go down to an E team who never plays an official game, but they're all just to scrim each other and to try talent and to put these next good players on so they have a team. And then if you decide to use that guy, you bring him to the main team. If not, you're just stuck in, contract prison on some B team, C team, D team, and no one will ever hear him from. So the only downside there is, there's an insane amount of talent, But it sounds like a lot of the really good players are probably like snatched up at the moment. So you'd have to get like ahead of them essentially. So, and then also there's the whole angle that like, I feel as though just with the political situation of the world, I don't know if like Chinese players going import to North America would necessarily be like the most appreciated storyline domestically in their country, you know.
Unless it's a Hong Kong player, right? But yeah, that could.
I have no comment whatsoever on that. Yes, I don't know. Didn't refer to.
Anyways, final. Oh, we have to talk about the Smoothie Bio swap. It's a rumor, but what do you guys think about the Smoothie Bio swap if it does come?
Man alive! Did Smoothie like build his first gaming PC on an ancient Indian burial ground? This guy, even when he's a good player, he's just never allowed to stay in a team for like more than a year or something. Yeah. Every team's just gone. And what's mad is every player he plays with says like he's a good shot caller, like good teammate, like a good support. His career just seems so cursed, though. It's like every time he's never there when the team's at their best, it feels.
You know what they say, like, if it smells like shit everywhere you walk, look below your feet. I don't think that's the case for Smoothie. It looks like that. It looks like Smoothie's the problem, and it looks like Smoothie's getting shuffled around. I've worked with Smoothie on Team Liquid. Smoothie is so hardworking, and I'm still good friends with a few people on TSM, and whenever they talk about Smoothie, like, the only thing he ever does is gym, League, and sleep. Like, this guy is so dedicated to League of Legends. Like, the only like caveat against Smoothie would be like he can be too vocal and take over comms, but other than that, like, I just don't see like a big negative for Smoothie, so I'm shocked that he's getting passed around so much.
I mean, that's such an easy fix, right? Like, for example, I don't know if you've ever heard Zazol play, but go back 2-3 years. No offense to the guy, but he would not shut up. He'd be talking 24/7 in the comms, and now he's one of the better supports because it's super easy to tell someone to stop talking, right? And if there's someone else on the team that's talking a lot, that person isn't inclined to talk. I imagine Smoothie talks a lot because the team is quiet. You know, like if you're just playing the game and nothing's kind of going on, that's fine for solo queue. But if you're in a competitive match, you probably want to be talking about, hey, what do you guys want to do a minute from now, 2 minutes from now, 30 seconds from now? And if no one's talking, it seems like he's the person to fill that void. So if you just have a team that's continually talking about what their next steps should be, that's a pretty easy fix, you know? So, and it's not like talking is a bad thing unless he's saying stupid stuff, but I doubt he's saying irrelevant stuff to the game.
Sure. I will just say, by the way, because obviously, like, CSGO is a game where voice comms are built into the game. It's a very integral part of it because you can talk, obviously, between all the rounds and stuff. In CSGO, that is actually a famous thing that a lot of fans misunderstand. They think that pro teams would be talking 24/7 and giving all the info. And actually, pro teams talk less than randoms playing matchmaking. Because what they do, and this is how you solve this problem, is they create protocols of who talks when, basically. And they tell people stuff like if you're playing this particular bomb site, like call these things, but you don't need to call this other thing. Like the other teammate can see that, or someone else on the map knows that's happening based on what you said earlier. So basically they tell you when not to talk so you can create this space that allows the team to actually function. I feel like that's just something that probably gets lost on some League players.
Well, that's probably because in CSGO, sound is a lot more important than in League, right? Sure. I don't have to listen to footsteps in League or listen to a smoke or a flash in League or someone picking up their gun. Like, what can I hear? Rengar ultimate or Sion ultimate? Regardless of how quiet the game is going to be, I'm going to hear that. So I think it's kind of different in that regard. Yes, I don't think you need to be constantly talking in League. I think people talk too much. You kind of want to make a game plan a minute and a half to 2 minutes out. You don't want to be making a game plan 5-10 minutes out. You don't want to be making a game plan 10 seconds out. You want to start preparing for things a minute to 2 minutes ahead of time. And once you say that plan, like say, hey, Dragon's in a minute, everyone should know what to do. But some teams go like, hey, you need to buy a pink, you need to ward this, hey, everyone needs to recall for this. Why do I need to tell you that? If I tell you Dragon is spawning in 1, that's implying I want to fight it, and you should know what to do. You need to recall, get your pink ward, get into position at the right place. But a lot of teams spend a lot of time detailing what to do, but you should honestly know what to do if I say, hey, Dragon's in a minute. I don't need to say anything more than that, right? It should be self-explanatory, but I don't know if teams are there yet, and I honestly don't know.
Okay. Loco, I can't do this for too long, mate. So, like, should we do like one more?
Sure, one more team.
What do you want? Pick a juicy one. What would be a fun one?
What would be a fun one? So C9, that one's actually really fun because there's a lot of information surrounding it, and something that Jack said 2 days ago makes things really interesting. So 2 days ago on Discord, Jack said, "Our roster is finished. What is it? My work is done. So C9 has.
That's usually what Reaper says at the end of Worlds. Oh, sorry, yeah, different meaning. Yeah, keep going.
C9 has like a good idea on what their roster is going to be apparently. Okay. And one thing that Jack also confirmed, well, he said it in a Twitch chat, so it doesn't hold that much weight, but he said Licorice is going to stay on C9. And another thing, so now here we can start talking about the rumors. So the rumors for C9 bot lane is stuff like Lost and Diamond bot lane. And then there's also rumors about Zben bot lane.
Who the fuck is Diamond?
Diamond, he's
a support player.
C9
Isn't he on the C9 team, the academy team?
Yes, he's on C9 academy team.
Yeah.
And then there's also rumors about the EG buyout stopping. The EG buyout got canceled, and C9 is keeping those 4 players. Maybe Svenskeren still gets sold, and then Blabber obviously starting. There's actually been no rumors about Niski, so I'm really curious what they do in mid lane. But from like the top side of the map, I think we can get like a good like general idea. It's gonna be Licorice, Blabber, potentially Niski, and then for AD carry support, I have no idea. I really hated like the Zben move, and then the more I thought about it, and the more I talked to other people, why I think it might be more possible is Zben's contract is running out this year, so there wouldn't be a buyout. And Jack loves taking kind of like Andy's trash and turning it into his treasure. I mean, most notably Svenskeren. So yeah, that's something that might happen. And from what I heard, I am not sure how true it is. My EU sources aren't that good, but the absolute top teams in Europe will not be picking up Zben, and his offers came from lower end. So maybe he decides it's better to stay in NA and go to C9. So it seems like the Zben to C9 rumor is picking up more traction.
By the way, I mean, obviously this doesn't necessarily mean anything because Svenskeren also has the same thing. But I noticed on the contract database, Niski is contracted until the end of 2021. Mm-hmm. So in theory, I mean, that doesn't mean he's not going. But I actually haven't heard any rumors about Niski, so I'd imagine he's probably staying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, I mean, because we don't hear anything doesn't mean there's not something happening. It's just rumors that are public.
It's just, put it this way, like, between all the people I know, like, it'd be unusual if nobody had heard a rumor, you know. Usually, like, someone has the vague makings of it. And also, the other problem is, I'm trying to think what team would pick Niski. There's not that many I feel like are in the market, because the problem is his name still doesn't have the value of, like, a big name. He's not Jensen, is he? Like, it doesn't matter how good he is in the game.
Yeah. And then so there's people in the chat saying like...
So what's the prospective lineup? The prospective lineup is Licorice, who was the jungler?
Blabber.
Blabber, oh yes, Blabber. And then maybe Niski mid. And then the bot lane, well, that's totally uncertain, right?
Yeah, it could be Zben or it could be Lost Diamond. Lost is...
Are either of those even better than Sneaky, though? Is Lost or Sven better than Sneaky? And if they are, how much better to warrant losing your 20,000 CCV streamer that has...
Yes.
Biggest name in League.
Wasn't Lost the guy who was just like a decent team fighter, but he just could never get
Fox guy,
guy. Oh, Echo Fox, right? Yes.
He played well in every game he was in. He's from
Australia, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. How Oceania. I mean, he played well. I don't know if he'd be better than Sneaky, but I guess if you're trying to like work your talent up, like with Blabber and Licorice and Diamond, it makes sense. It's a good story.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this scene.
I don't think that team sounds very good. That sounds like the 6th best team in LCS.
I'm surprised they don't like Deathly a lot. Like, they like Deathly enough to pick him up from Golden Guardians, but not enough to... And they even gave him a game at Worlds, and to just let go of Deathly completely and go for Lost, who's an import, like, seems a little bit weird to me.
Could it be, like, personality issue or something like that? Because... You know, he's a good player, right? I've played with him. You've coached him. I think he's a super good player. But if he's bouncing around from team to team, usually that's a case of, like, not that he's a good enough player, but the case of that he's having issues of being on the team. I don't know.
Definitely was strong-minded, but when you showed him good leadership and when you showed him why you were more right and why he should follow you, I haven't had problems with it, and I don't think he, like, kind of had issues following you. I think he had issues when he felt like the criticism coming towards him was from like someone maybe equal or lesser than him. But when there is strong leadership figures on the team, which Reaper definitely will be for C9, I don't think that would have been a problem.
By the way, like being as we're approaching the end of the show anyway, so we'll have one last little rant. That's a good one. I've got to say this. I actually think, no joke, if you list all the players in the LCS and you look at what they actually have done on one hand, like the tangible results of like how they played, the eye test, like their history, and then you look at like the hype around them, I think Blabber's actually one of the most overrated players in the LCS. Because what has he actually done in the LCS? He came in as the sob when they sobbed everyone out for a while, and then they still brought Svenskeren back anyway to do the playoff run. At Worlds, he's not really a factor because he got to play this time. And what did he do? Just like basically, it was like Blabber on steroids from LCS. He went ham in the early game, and if he could get the kills, it looked good. If he didn't, I actually saw someone made a good comparison. He's like the NA Ning, the jungler of Invictus Gaming, at least how he used to play it. Like, this guy's never met a gank or a push he didn't like. And so the problem is, when that's working, you will snowball the game and take over it. But when it isn't, I always say this, the part that's lost in League in terms of terminology is people know the concept of snowballing and they know the concept of feeding, right? Those aren't always the same thing. Sometimes when you try to snowball the game, but you misexecute it, you do snowball the game for the other team. You just put that guy ahead 2 kills and yourself down, and now you're the jungler, you're behind. Like, so my problem with Blabber is I think he's way too feast or famine, at least from what I've seen so far in LCS. So, like, I'm concerned that he hasn't developed much since he came into the team in that regard. Like, it's not a concern for you, Loco? You like him as a starting jungler for C9?
Oh, I don't even know what to think about C9 anymore because almost all other teams operate under we want to be good or we want to be budget. C9 is very opportunistic on what's available to them. It seems like they never want to say no to a good deal, but they're also willing to pick up players that are really good if the price is right, like most notably Caps and most notably like the Vulcan buyout, 1.5 million that was discussed. So it seems like they're willing to spend money when it's right, but when it's not right, like they're fine. So I share the same kind of doubts regarding Blabber, and my other like host that I do a show with, Dom thinks Blabber is like top 3 LCS. I want to see a bigger body of work from Blabber. We just seen so little, and it's so easy to buy into the hype, and he's surrounded by good players. Like, I want to see him with like this
Wait a
UC9
minute.
roster.
Who does he fit? Right, so
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you some names. Svenskeren, MVP of the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
Xmithy, arguably the other greatest player in the region.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go ahead and throw in like Meteos was pretty good, I'd say, over the split. Which of those is he taken out of his list? Meteos, I'm guessing, right? Is he Meteos here?
I don't want to speak for Dom, but like Dom talks about Blabber as like a top.
Oh, he didn't
jungler.
list the other members of the top 3.
Yeah,
he didn't say who his top 3 are, basically, though.
He said he's top 3.
For junglers, for junglers to have a feast or famine kind of playstyle, I think that's the best role to have that feast or famine playstyle. You've seen countless times at Worlds where a jungler has just taken over their entire game and won the entire game for them. Yes, there will be games where that doesn't happen, but even if you're a feast or famine jungler and you're 55% of the time to feast, that's a winning percentage, right? You'll win the majority of your games. You can increase that to 60-40. Yes, you're going to lose 40% of the games where you just hard in, but you're going to win 60% of the games where you just hard carry, right? Now, you compare that to a jungler that doesn't have a feast or famine playstyle, and he's just kind of passive, following his team, doing whatever. You're not really using the most of that position. Jungle is a role that can affect every single lane in this entire game. They should be the ones that are feast or famine out of any other position out there, and this is the best position to be that way. So I like the fact that he is that way. The fact that he's 18 years old, 19 years old, correct me if I'm wrong, but I doubt he's that old. That's a very good prospect for a jungler to have. 1, he is good enough to hard carry. 2, he doesn't seem to have the toxicity issues that other junglers have. So not only can he hard carry, he's not a toxic, player. That's a very good prospect for a player to have while they're young, while they haven't had that much time to be in the LCS. Like you said, he's had a couple games in Worlds. He has a couple games in LCS. Give him an entire year of LCS. See how well he can develop his feast or famine playstyle. And if he can increase that to a 60-65% win rate, that's a very good jungler in my book. Like, I would take a feast or famine jungler that wins 65% of the time versus a guy that goes 50-50. That plays more passively.
The problem
it's more
is
fun that way too,
Mm-hmm. The problem is most fans think he's already there, and most fans and some analysts already think so highly of him without him getting to show or prove as much as he should before like all that hype is justified. Not saying he can't be that player
It's
yet.
because they're doing the classic move, which is like, to be fair, I get it, right? I always say, I have like a saying that goes like, potential is the most alluring thing in a player. Like when you see a flash of brilliance and you're like, holy shit, what if he could do that all the time? What if that was who he was like 5 days a week? You'd have one of the best players in the country, in the world, and whatever. Like, I think if you want to go back into the old days of when you guys were all in the league, that's why I always used to think that about Shifter when he was in the course team and then Dignitas. Like, you would see games where you were like, this guy can go head to head with Bjerg. This guy's actually really skilled. But it never quite made it through, He was like, he's a good player, he had skills, but he never made it to be the absolute best. So the problem with that is it's very easy when you like a player to just fall in love with their best game and kind of just think, they'll sort out the bad game. But I think you have to kind of take the totality of. I always tell people that every game counts. Like the bad one counts, the one where you're tired counts, the one where you have your best game counts. They all count, but you have to take like an average of them, you know. So I would just say they're probably being a bit too enthusiastic about the present. Like maybe in the future it can be that, but yeah, I think it's kind of crazy to think that he already is the Loco. Like he hasn't even played enough games to really warrant that rep, has he?
All right. Well, let's start closing out the show. Hi, do you have any final words?
No, not really.
Where can they check you out? Where can they check out Radiance?
Oh, you're a genius, dude. So if you guys are interested in what I'm doing at Radiance, which is just a new esport organization that has a huge focus on being respectful to others, rounding people to play games, and checking out our amateur teams, or if you're interested in the FGC, you can just follow us on Twitter at RadianceGG, or check out the website radiance.gg, or follow me and you'll see all the updates on it. Come support us. We got cool merchandise like this shirt. If you want some, I can send some to you, Loco and Thorin. Let me know. But I'm working on a league amateur team as well. I'm actually in the process of trying to find 4 to 5-ish new players to see what I can do, but we'll see more on that.
All right. Are you going to scouting grounds like it's going on right now if you want new amateur players?
Right. The issue is that any scouting ground player wants me on an academy team first and foremost. So, like, imagine me walking up, hey, would you rather be on C9 Academy or Radiance? You know, they're going to choose C9 Academy. So I kind of have to wait to see who isn't picked up by a team and then go from there. But I'll be watching it, yeah. I don't know if I'm going in person. I pretty much know all the players in that list. I don't know who will and who won't get picked up. So we'll see.
All right, cool. Don't get any final words?
Nope. GG.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for being on. Hi. Thank you so much for hosting the show once again,
Yeah,
Duncan.
cheers.
All right, later, guys.
Peace. Cheers, boys.
Let's do our Patreon. Thank you. Thank you to our gold Patreon supporters, ButtPanther420, Tobias Bernasconi, Icelandic C9 Fan, and Texas Each Ho Ho Ho. Without you guys, the show would not be possible. And thank you to every Twitch subscriber, every YouTube subscriber, and just a regular Twitch viewer, Spotify, or if you're an Apple, iTunes, whoever, wherever you're listening from, thank you so much for making the show possible.